I'm waiting for the... Oh, quiet in here all of a sudden. I'm scared now.
It sounds like church.
Yeah, I'm
I
scared.
can't see. I can't see that.
That's all right.
Notice. Are you all here? Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our joint meeting, Suffolk City Council and School Board. Just want everybody to know that the issues, you told me it was yellow. Okay. We're going to go to introductions in a little bit, but I want everyone to know that the items on our agenda were discussed and vetted by both parties and agreed to in advance. I'm looking forward to some robust discussion, maybe on several issues, and I think it's important that we've taken this opportunity to get together as two bodies to discuss these issues. Before we get started, I'm going to go ahead and do introductions, and our School Board Chair, Ms. Jenkins, will do some, and then after that, I'll go through the process as to how we're going to conduct ourselves and operate as we have the opportunity to listen to the presentations and have ample opportunity to respond, and then get feedback from the presenters as far as answering your questions, and then from there we can have some more conversation between us. So without any further ado, I'll start to my left, obviously City Manager Mr. Al Moore, our City Attorney Mr. William Hutchins, Vice Mayor Ward, Councilman Rector. It's a good thing I have the nameplates there, right? Skip one. Oh, and I'm sorry, Councilman Leotis Williams is under the weather and he just informed me a few minutes ago that he will not be able to attend. Councilmember Butler Barlow, Councilmember Johnson, Councilmember Bennett, Councilmember Fawcett, and I think that's care of my introduction, so it's all yours.
Thank you. We are glad to be here to have a fruitful discussion. To my left, we have our Superintendent, Dr. John Gordon. We have our Attorney, Wendell Waller. We have our Vice Chair, Ms. Heather Howell. And we have our Board Member, Dr. Brittenham. We have Kimberly Slingloff. We have Phyllis Barham. We have Tyron Riddick. And we have Dr. Brooks Buck. And that's it.
We got everybody?
Yes.
Okay, so before we go to our first discussion item, I have discussed this with Chairman Jenkins as well, and she's in agreement with this process. What we're going to do is allow the presenters to present their topic. Our first two items are both budget items, so we're going to have both those presentations before we have any discussion because they're kind of rolled into one. You know, the school board needs to be aware of what our budget is. We need to be aware of what the school budgets, and then we can discuss budgets from there. So we're going to have both those presentations. The first one would be by Dr. Gordon, and the second one by City Manager Moore. We are going to, after each presentation, we'll just go around the room, and I guess I can start with the Vice Mayor one time, and next time we'll start this way, so it's kind of fair all the way around. And we're going to allow everyone 5 minutes, up to 5 minutes, for questions and or comments. And then we'll go to the next person, and if you don't have any, just say, you know, I'm good, I don't have anything to ask, that's okay. It's just as it directly relates to the presentation that you just received. Then once we've gone around the room, the presenters will have the opportunity to collect their thoughts based on the first one, and maybe what Vice Mayor Ward, the question he had was going to be the same question that Councilman Rector had, so obviously you can skip that one and go around, and then we'll get responses. And then from there, we'll go ahead and ask for additional questions in regards to what the response is. Hopefully, we've got a lot of, it doesn't look like much, but there's a lot on here. There's 17 folks gathered around right now. Well, I forgot to take Leo, there's 16. So I just figured 5 minutes for questions, 5 minutes for an answer, 15 minutes on, we're going to be here for a little while, which is okay. That's why we decided to have it on a day that is not a council day, so there really are no time constraints for most of it, other than what time you told your spouse you were going to be home or whatever. But other than that, the council doesn't have any time constraints while we're waiting for a meeting to start. So without any further ado, at this time, I'm going to ask our school superintendent if he would like to present the school budget.
Thank you, Mayor Duman. I'm going to call to the podium our Chief Financial Officer, Ms. Wendy Forsman, to provide a brief version of the superintendent's proposed budget that we did to our school board and our school community on February 29th, 2024. Ms. Forsman is going to focus on actual allocations and requests from the city, our overall expenditures, and also give her an overview of how things have been adjusted over the last couple of years when it comes to grant funding. Ms. Forsman?
Good afternoon, Council and School Board. We're going to talk today a little bit about some items that we also presented, as Dr. Gordon said, to our board. The first one being the CARES Act. Everyone is interested in the CARES Act. The last CARES Act is complete September 30th. We have to have all the funds obligated by September 30th. So as you can imagine, that was a big part of our budget discussions before we developed our budget. You can see here from the slide that there's a key on the bottom right that you can focus on that shows you exactly what we did with the key areas of the funding and what we had been using the funding for the last 3 years. The items in black are the operating fund increases. The items in red were covered by all the state all-in funding. That's kind of a weird way to put it, but the state gave us some funding called all-in funding, and that went in our grant fund, and then it covered those items in red. And then the items in blue are items that we know are important, and we're trying very hard to find grant fund opportunities to cover them. We have found some opportunities for some of them and are still looking for ways to cover others. We would really like to make sure that we can cover all of these items. They were all considered items that were very necessary to the students of the division. And so that is exactly what we have done with each item that was decided to move forward with the CARES Act. So you can see here that the CARES Act began in 21. We had a public hearing in May of 21 on how we were going to use those funds. On August 21st, the board approved our application to the state. October 21st, the council appropriated the money for ESSER 1, 2, and 3. We called them CARES 1, 2, and 3. And the CLSRF grant funds that were given to us for HVAC systems. And then December 21, the board approved a budget amendment that after the council appropriated the money for the grant fund. And since that time, we have been utilizing that money and only coming to the board when we had a change in an application, an actual application change. Otherwise, we haven't come to the board. So our raise this year, currently in the budget that was sent to the city on April 1st, was a step raise because, as you know, the governor has not signed the budget yet. So we're having to go on what we know. The governor has really just held up the budget at this point until he can meet on the 17th with the special session of the General Assembly. And so we had to go on the governor's proposed budget from December. So that's why you will see only a step raise here. Step raises for our teachers and professionals is between 1 and 1.75%. You can see here the history of our raises the last 5 years, and you can see we've gone from a beginning salary of $45,000 to $54,060 as of February 29th. Another focus for us was early childhood, Virginia Pre-K. We're adding a classroom to Booker T. Washington. This provides 20 more slots than the state funding, so this allows us to serve more children, to have our waiting list be smaller or non-existent, we hope. And so our vision actually is to open a preschool center in the future, because we feel like it's that important to our city and to our students. For return on investment by the city, we wanted to, everyone to understand that we've had decreases in discipline referrals for safety. We've put additional teachers in for the CPPA program. That's our Center for Performing and Production Arts out at Lakeland. If you have not been there, I would encourage you to go. It is a wonderful, wonderful opportunity for our students to learn. The Navy JROTC, or Navy Cadet Program is what they called it, and then another ITRT. We've also added ISS monitors throughout the division so that we have one in every building instead of them sharing buildings. We've had annual increases for our staff, as you saw from those raises. Of course, an increase in our early childhood education. We've done a lot of professional development, professional learning in that area. 95% division accreditation with growth, fifth growth in the state. 33.9 million in scholarships for the class of 2023. We're also doing the Grow Your Own Educators Rising, the I Teach program, to help bring teachers to the profession. As we all know, there's a teacher shortage, so we're doing everything we can for that. The city request, as you're well aware, is $4 million to bring the request to $75.3 million in appropriation from city funding. This is the budget. As you can see, the actual numbers, what we actually physically spent in 22-23, $215.3 million. Our current revised budget is $227.7 million, and our proposed budget with a 6.59% increase is $242.7 million. The governor's proposed budget brought us $6 million, and that $6 million was used as we talked about in the budget process. So that money is helping with raises, it's helping with security, it's helping with all the things that we talked about. If you look to reconcile what the budget book says to what I have said, I wanted to make sure and put this slide in here because the revised column of the budget book includes the one-time reappropriation of buses. If you'll remember, the city council reappropriated that bus money to us for 24-25. And so we have to take that back out because it's a one-time funding. And then we reduced our other revenue, $230,000, because we are not charging for summer school. Students go to summer school for free. So we're no longer receiving that funding. So the actual annual increase of the budget is $8.1 million as a total. If you look at how our revenue for the operating fund comes in, you can see that 61% of our revenue comes from the state, 38% as proposed comes from the city, and then federal revenue is 0.55 and other funds are 0.29%. So very small amounts. How we spend our money, you can see here very clearly, we spend 0.03% on instruction and instructional support. Less than, well, no, not less than, I'm sorry, 2% of our administrative costs, so 2% of our budget is administrative costs, which is very low for the area for school divisions and administration and attendance. Health and psychology is 1.37%. Food services up near the top is 4.26%, and technology makes up 4.06% of our budget. So you can see here the breakdown of the budget. Compensation and benefits make up the majority of our budget. We are people-driven. So 84.69% of our budget is for benefits and compensation. Only 15% of our entire budget is to keep schools open, run buses, have electricity, materials and supplies, that kind of stuff. That's all I've got.
We'll go ahead and let the manager present the city's budget, and then we'll go around and ask for questions from either side.
Okay, on the city's part of the budget, I'll have Charles Meek, Director of Finance, come present. Charles.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the Suffolk School Board. This afternoon, I'm going to provide you with an overview of the city's budget with an emphasis on schools funding. Our budget priorities for the proposed FY25 year include maintaining service levels in our growing city with no tax rate increase, critical personnel needs and employee compensation, community health and safety, public education, quality of life through capital improvements, and financial policy compliance to maintain our AAA bond rating status. The proposed budget across all 17 funds totals $882,100,325. A majority of city services, including the local contribution from the city to schools, comes out of the general fund, which is proposed at $324,213,302. And the schools fund budget in total, as Ms. Forsman noted, $242,729,720. Looking at general fund revenue projections for next year, we're projecting a $28.9 million increase in general fund revenue. The real projected revenue growth is actually $21.6 million, and that's due to $7.3 million we're planning to draw from our capital reserve fund for capital projects. General property tax revenue, projecting almost a $15.8 million increase. That's driven mainly by real estate. Assessed values increased 5.4% this year, which is about $11.4 million in additional projected revenue. And then also personal property tax revenue, we're projecting about a $4 million increase next year. Other local taxes, which would include sales, meals, business license, lodging, tobacco, motor vehicle licenses, things of that nature, projecting a little over $2 million increase. That's driven mainly by sales, increased sales tax revenue, meals tax revenue, and business license tax revenue. Fees, charges, and miscellaneous. $2.6 million increase. Most of that is driven by interest earnings on cash in the bank and on bond proceeds. We're projecting about a $2 million increase next year, and the rest of it is mainly due to EMS fee revenue, emergency medical service revenue, which is trending higher. State and federal funding, just shy of $1 million increase next year, mostly driven by social service program funds that we receive from the state and federal government. And then again, fund balance and transfers in, $7.3 million of that coming from our capital reserve fund to support projects approved in the capital improvements plan. Overall highlights of the budget. The proposed budget included a real estate tax rate unchanged at $1.09 per $100 of assessed value. At the April 3rd work session where the budget was rolled out, City Council adopted a motion directing the city manager to reduce the proposed real estate tax rate to $1.07, so a 2-cent reduction. That will impact the proposed budget by about $3.2 million. Now, the city manager and I will be coming back with an option or options to address that reduction in the upcoming meetings. The proposed budget provides additional funding for personnel and other city departments that are experiencing increased service demand. With our population increasing over 100,000, we have more demand for services. Over half of that personnel is for public safety departments. We've proposed additional funding for our community health and safety partners. Some of those organizations include the Western Tidewater Health District and the Western Tidewater Community Services Board. And then we've also programmed some funding in for homeless shelter operations, as the city has acquired a building, is currently renovating that, and hopes to have a emergency shelter in place in the near future. Funding for all capital projects was approved in the first year of the CIP, is in the budget, and we're in compliance with all of our financial policies, which are needed to maintain our AAA bond rating. Looking at the school's budget, the proposed fiscal year 25 budget provides $75.3 million in local funding for school operations. That includes the $4 million in new money requested by the school board, and then in addition, carrying forward the $2 million that was approved mid-year this year in FY24 for school security and safety initiatives. $28.6 million in capital funding, 25 of which for the JFK Middle School Replacement Project, and $3.6 million for the Northern Shores Elementary addition. The city also provides for debt service on school projects. It's budgeted at $11.5 million. That's about a $400,000 reduction next year, and that's due to some old projects coming off the books, but we're expecting that to increase over the next few years as the JFK Middle School bond funding comes on board. And then lastly, $739,702 is budgeted for school administration and operations building leases. It's a $296,000 increase, and that is mainly due to the new lease for the professional building with the addition of the first floor space, as well as the operations building on Bright Lane here in Suffolk. And with that, we'll take any questions you may have.
We'll go ahead and go to questions and comments. We'll start with Vice Mayor Ward. Do you have any questions or comments concerning the budget?
No, pass.
You're good. Okay, Dr. Brooks-Bug.
Yeah, I did have one question. I was writing it down. With the capital fund for public education with regard to Northern Shores, I remember us with the 3.5. There's the green light.
I think you're on, you just need to pull it down maybe. There you go.
Okay. Am I heard now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. With regard to the Northern Shores money, we used to 3.5 million for repairs. And we offered to, or decided to, give up that money and use it toward the building of the addition to Northern Shores. And I'm looking at this now, and my question is, was there an additional $3.6 million added to that 3.5 that was already agreed upon? Are we talking about different money here? Are we talking about the same money that has been contributed to the Northern Shores project from before? Is it a different, my question is it
Gotcha.
different money than that money?
And I think if it's okay with the school board chair, maybe we change the process a little bit, and we'll go ahead and try to, rather than going around the room, we'll just do 5 minutes and then try to answer the questions directly, rather than going back to it again. So I think your question is the 3.5 million, what you were talking about, well, managed to do it. money that was originally set aside for major repairs, and at the school board's suggestion, that money was applied, so I think you're looking at the total now.
Yeah, what we're talking about there is what's in the CIP that goes towards the school. And yes, what you're saying is the superintendent and I got together a few years ago at the direction of the school board, and we took maintenance money to be able to expedite Northern Shores in the CIP. So what the number that we're showing here is the number we have in the CIP today for Northern Shores.
So is that the same money, the maintenance money that we were talking about? That's not an additional, my question was that an additional 3.6 or is 3.5 of that money the same money? That was just my
Roughly the
question.
same.
That's the same
Roughly
money?
the same.
Okay, all right, thank you. That was my question.
Councilman Rector?
I'm good, thank you. I don't have any questions.
Ms. Byram?
No questions.
Ms. Barlow?
I'm good.
And Ms. Lingler?
I'm
Mr.
good-
Johnson?
I'm good for now. We'll go back.
I'm good for now.
Board member, good? Councilman Bennett?
Thank you all for both presentations. I thought it was very timely. Now we can talk about what the future looks like, and we'll work from there. That's it.
Councilman Fawcett?
No, I just want to revert back to something I had seen in the budget as part of the cost is we keep seeing, and you can help me with this, Dr. Gordon, these sinkholes are driving me crazy. So I want to know what is the method you're using to identify, and are we getting close to the edge here? Because we're putting another $1 million to that sinkhole operation, and I'd love to hope we're getting close to the end of it, is what I'd like to know.
Thank you for that question. Thank you for that question, Mr. Fawcett. So the first part of your question was the method that we've used. So we have brought out teams to really review the land, including having divers go into these sinkhole areas. And we have found in our discussions with Mr. Napier's team and the company that's been used, I've learned the city manager that there was concerns over the way that a lot of the pipes were being first installed, as far as not using metal pipes, not having rock around the pipes, so that if there's any land movement, since we get a lot of rain there in Suffolk, that's the reason that it's really created the sinkholes. The second part of your question is if we're getting a handle on it. We believe we're getting a handle on it based on the fact that in the past, we have tried to find the most conservative way to repair the sinkholes, but we can't put Band-Aids on them anymore, which is why City Council has seen an increase in the expenditures to repair them. So we're repairing them all. And just to give you an example, currently right now, what we're sitting at as far as when we first got back from spring break on Monday is $1.24 million in existing sinkhole repairs. We're looking at $244,000 at Colonel Fred Cherry, $9,600 at Elephant's Fork, Florence Bowser, $225,000, Kings Fork High School, which was one of our major concerns, Mr. Fawcett, part of the reason why we delayed putting our synthetic fields in there because we had to fix several sinkholes in the athletic area. That's now down to $145,000. Lakeland High School, this is a big one at $420,000 that we're looking at, and Nansemond River, $195,000. So when we put that piece in our budget, we were hoping that we would have that $1 million to be able to cover what we were seeing at the time. And as we all know, we had large amounts of rain just a short couple of days ago. And that's usually been the pattern. Once we get large amounts of rain for multiple days in a row, within 7 to 10 days is when sometimes sinkholes have developed. But the work that Mr. Napier has done and Mr. Hines as our purchasing manager being proactive, we basically have people on standby now to be able to take a look at what's going on. So when I put the original proposal in to the city manager, that was based on what we were seeing at the time. We know, to your point, we've probably spent about $4.5 million in sinkholes over the last 3 to 4 years, and we believe that repairing them fully now will basically be able to put a cap on what we're seeing as long as nothing major happens with a water issue in the future.
Okay, thank you for that.
Vice Chair Howard?
No questions.
No questions? Madam Chairman?
All right. I have a question, just for clarity. When it says the budget priorities, when it says maintain service levels in our growing city with no tax rate increase, does that include like water and personal property taxes? Just for clarity.
That is speaking to real estate.
Okay.
Okay, well, I'd just like to sum it up in that we are indeed fortunate that our revenues are up significantly last year. I don't think that trend's going to continue. I think we can take for granted that the real estate market has kind of cooled off a little bit, and a lot of other things have leveled off. One of the, Mr. Meeks referred to, our interest income on our investments with our reserves being what they are have been a bright light in the budget. For one thing, but we can't count on that. But looking at where we are in revenues, we have put ourselves in a position where I think everyone on council, obviously, we made a motion and directed the manager to reduce the real estate rate to offer some relief to our customers, but our citizens and taxpayers. And also at the same time, there's not an issue from my standpoint or others in our ability to fully fund the school system's request. Now, the sinkhole issue did come up, as alluded to by Councilman Fawcett, and it's not so much what we're going to do to fix them as it is what are we going to do to make sure we don't have any more. I mean, we've got a new school coming down the pike. We're going to have a new building going on. Hopefully, it won't be that long before we get to an elementary school solution. So as these schools are built, it's my understanding that a lot of what's happened with the sinkholes is a matter of material and workmanship. So the extra money needs to go into it to ensure that the foundations are prepared properly, to ensure that the material is the best material that we can use, be it concrete or what have you, because this area is prone to sinkholes, as we well know. So it's just, from my standpoint, it'd just be a suggestion when these things are being contracted, if we can get some type of guarantee from the contractor that once Mr. Napier shaking his head, you're not going to do that. But, we need to get some kind of assurances that these things are the material and workmanship is to the point where we shouldn't expect any more problems going down the road. So other than that, it's, I think both budgets are a good news story.
Mayor, can I say
Yes, ma'am.
something?
Oh, absolutely.
Another thing that we discussed in our joint meeting with our superintendent is that you all may provide some city inspectors to go periodically and check themselves to see how things are going when things are being built. So you all can check to see if things are
Well,
up to your speed, and that's what we discussed.
I'm sure, right. I'm sure the city manager would have no objection to sending city staff, if we need to send Mr. Lewis from Public Works to do more than the cursory inspection. Once again, I think our inspectors ensure that work is done to code and it passes code. But if I'm not mistaken, they're not responsible for workmanship or quality of the material, but it does have to pass code. So I'm sure the manager doesn't mind sending additional staff before we cover up whatever we need to cover up to do the best we can to ensure that there's not an issue with it again. Anything you want to add to that?
I thought that was my cue.
Yeah.
Yes, we talked with Dr. Gordon, and I have talked and the thought is not only new construction, but I think when we have a repair, that we see a sinkhole, that maybe we get our guys out to take a look to come to conclusions of what we're looking at, hopefully. And again, it's my understanding that the school is using concrete pipe on JFK, which is, I think, a step forward on the material end. But yeah, we would be more than happy to work hand in hand.
Can I add that?
Yes, absolutely, Superintendent.
And thank you, Mayor Dorn and Mr. Moore. And also, as a part of that, what we also discussed is ensuring that, since we have several schools that are coming down the pike to be built, if they're not built on the current location, that there also includes an inspection of any potential land sites. It's been a concern of ours of some of the land sites potentially not being adequate to hold up to the size and the acreage of a school, when we're talking about a building being there for probably 50 years. So we want to make sure that the city manager and I have discussed ensuring that any selection of land sites includes not only the grading of the land, but the inspection of the land for any potential areas that may cause sinkholes in the future.
Is there any further discussion on the budget or sinkholes? Hearing none, we'll move to our next discussion item, which is Suffolk Public School System Operations Facility relocation and the transfer of SPS property to the city. Mr. Manager.
Charles, I may ask for your assistance up there to move slides forward so I can do that, talking from here. Yes, Chair and Vice Chair and board members, as you're aware now, last fall, working with the superintendent, we were able to find a location that moved your operation facilities out of Freeney Avenue building, which we see on the next slide. Charles, if you can take me to that. It was, I visit that building, I went in that building. Wendy wouldn't go with me, but it was an experience, to say the least, to see how that has aged and the condition it was in. And the inefficiency that it brought to the school operations staff. So Mr. Hughes on our staff, working through some of his knowledge on the economic development end, was able to find a building at 1402 Bright Lane. The square footage of that, just slightly less than the Freeney Avenue building, but more efficient. The racking in there was left, is my understanding, and my understanding the staff is very happy with that facility. So that creates the opportunity to maybe release that so we can remove that building and improve the neighborhood over there by getting demolition done on the old building. Charles, on the next slide, as we were talking, of course, I sent a letter to the superintendent in October requesting that the Freeney Avenue, if we could be out of that by April, the end of April, which is coming upon us, so we can start looking at the ability to that. Along with that, I mentioned Driver in that letter, Driver Elementary School, which is a school that has been used for, my understanding, storage over the last several years. Now, I've put some pictures up here on that, and of course, I know Ms. Howe's very familiar with it because I believe you were involved in Little League out there for a while, or worked with the Little League on some issues out there recently. So the top left picture shows the gym area in the rear of the school. The bottom picture shows the front of the school, and then we have some overheads over there, and also a picture of Bennett's Creek. What would be envisioned here, if that property could be surplus, that we could go in, take down the school building to eliminate an issue there. I understand that kids are getting in there and breaking a few things here and there, but that we could maybe make that more of a recreational site, enhance that area, put some better parking in. You have the Little League that if you ever gone out there on a Saturday during season, they're parked all over the place. Having coached there 8 years, I can tell you, they're parked all over the place. So it's an opportunity to utilize the gym. I know Smith River High School still utilizes the gym for the wrestling team. So we have to keep that in mind, but maybe it's an opportunity that we can do something that brings that property into more of a recreational play area, some parking for the residents of the area. Along with that, on the next slide, Of course, a major point of discussion is 100 North Main Street, and Superintendent and I have had other discussions on that. And of course, when you look at the CIP in FY 27 and 28, we set aside $7.5 million for the renovation of the Human Resources Building. But looking at that, of course, we'll have competition for parking, which it sits over there with school staff and our staff. But one of the discussions we had, now that the operations have moved over to Bright Lane, that frees up, I think, some area over on Route 460 to Old Mount Zion, which is the other part of your operations, to maybe evaluate the opportunity, to analyze the opportunity. Maybe the administration building gets built there as part of the school complex, which would free up the Human Resources Building for future growth on city staff. So I put that out. We have had brief conversations on that. It's floated it back and forth between each other, not to put him on the spot. I don't want to put him on the spot, but him and I have had the conversation. So, moving ahead, looking at potential or proposed next steps on this is that to turn the property over, the top two properties over, the school board would need to adopt a resolution claiming the properties as surplus. And then that resolution, along with property deeds, would need to be recorded in the clerk of the court's office to turn the property back to the city. At that point, we would have to schedule, especially on Freeney Avenue, some environmental remediation analysis to understand how much or what, if there's any asbestos in that building, what we need to do before we can tear it down and remove that from the area. We would have to take the same look at the driver. But as far as demolition, we would not want to demolish the gym at Driver. I think that still provides a good asset for the community, for the schools, for us to work on a relationship there to utilize that building different ways, similar to joint facilities that we have today. So, I would say that as going the next steps on the administration building, if the superintendent and I could sit down and maybe analyze what it would take if the admin got moved to Mount Zion, what that would mean, what the cost would be, so we can compare it to where we are today for just some options here. But we would want to do that before the next CIP so we can put in place what that path forward may be. If it stays the same, it stays the same. If we have an opportunity, I think there's an opportunity here to benefit from for the city in the long run by having this building downtown a little bit more closer to City Hall, because we're starting to feel some tightness in this facility already. But we would want to make sure, because our lease on the admin building, the current at 100, expires, I think, in December 2029, if I remember correctly. Superintendent, does that sound right? 5-year lease, wasn't it? Yeah, so, but we would need to bring back what option in the CIP next year. And that, it's a little short presentation, but I thought it would be worth to have maybe some discussion. Superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. So to kind of give the school side, and Mr. Moore's right, we have had probably 2 total conversations about this, and first of all, I appreciate Mr. Hughes for going out and helping to find Bright Lane. Bright Lane was a great compromise, a great facility. That really is a great example of what can happen when the school system and city council work together. I was over there the Friday before spring break, and Mr. Napier gave me a tour, and the facility is fantastic. It is fantastic. Mr. Moore is right with the racks being left in there. We have enough room to store all equipment, including things coming in from the loading docks, grass cutting equipment, et cetera. We also did clear everything out of Freeney Avenue. So I want to put that on the record here today. And some of the things that we did have to keep, Mr. Napier did move them over to his facility. We had staff to go over to make sure that we were within legal requirements from the suggestions from Mr. Waller for anything that had to be preserved. As you all can tell by Mr. Moore's presentation, we're talking about two buildings. And Freeney Avenue and Driver on the school system side, and we are only talking about one building that's currently under lease with the professional building. As a reminder to everyone, we allocated the $6.5 million that was set aside for the move of central office to the Human Resources Building. We actually used that as a part of the funding for John F. Kennedy. And that's part of the reason why the city expanded the lease for another 5 years. But it still doesn't really cover the issue of the overcrowding that we're having there, which is part of the reason why we brought up the operations center. I believe the original number was right around 14 to 15 million to complete phase 2 of the operations center for Mr. Napier's facilities and maintenance team, that we no longer will need phase 2. However, we still have the concern with the SAO being in 100 North Main Street. Mr. Moore is correct with the lease now also including the first floor of the SAO. The problem is the amount of work that needs to be done to that first floor is not fiscally responsible for us to put into if we're going to really be there only for another 3 to 4 years. So we're kind of making a tough call there with several of our offices still having 3 or 4 people in there. So on our end, I wouldn't recommend to the school board the transfer of both properties. I can see the transfer of one if you're looking at 1-to-1 until a solid plan is in place for central office. The Freeney Avenue piece, as I said, I think we're cleared out of there, so that transfer, if the board would like to do that, I have no reservations. I would actually recommend that. But the transfer of our second building with Driver Elementary, and we have all heard some of the concerns, and Mr. Moore is right about vandalism that has occurred in the past. I would potentially recommend that to the board for their decision after we have had a solid plan in place for central office. So I kind of wanted to give that caveat, since we did make the choice, because we want to keep our kids first, of giving up the renovation of the HR building. And Mr. Moore is correct when he has mentioned about the things getting tight here at City Hall. So we're looking for a compromise on basically a 2-to-2 for both the school division with Bright Lane and central office equaling to Freeney Avenue and Driver Elementary. Thank you.
Okay, I'll ask for questions or comments. Let's start with Vice Chair Howell this time, work around.
Yes, so speaking to Driver Elementary, and this is just my position because that's my borough, the 2-to-2 occurred when Florence Bowser was built. And that predates me, so I don't have a full understanding of it. But that comes into play here, and this has been discussed for a very long time. What is still left in there? And what is the timeline, and this was my question before Dr. Gordon's comments, what is the timeline for turning it over? What would have to be put in place to make sure we have a working relationship for the gym? Because I would want to make sure that's maintained for Nansemond River, more than a gentleman's handshake, like what do we do where other shared properties? So that you own it, but we have use of the gym for our wrestling team. That's all for now.
Councilman Foster.
Thanks, Mayor. When it comes to Driver, Heather, I've probably heard as many things about Driver Elementary as you have. In my 12 years on this council, when we vacated Driver Elementary for the new Florence Bowser, back in that time, it was discussed that if we built the Florence Bowser New School to accommodate the Driver Elementary students, that building would be turned back to the city for demolition. That building's been sitting there for a number of years since it's been vacated. It's had more vandalism. They have broke into that place time and time again, smashed everything, glass everywhere. The building is not habitable the way it is. Someone is going to have a problem. We have several children that play in that ball field back there. my understanding, Dr. Gordon, that the letter was sent to the manager that we would retain that building back by the end of April. I think there was some discussion transferred back and forth on that. I think my discussion with you is we would have that back by the end of April also. I don't get the position you're taking on a two-to-two situation. I think we're in good faith trying to do something to get you to where you want to go. But I think holding it as a placeholder for Driver Elementary is not the method. It's not the method. The city manager and myself have sat down on several occasions on Driver Elementary with some alternative plans to, once that school is taken down, to do some kind of a repurpose, rehab, a little bit of that gym in the back, so that be something the community would have good use in, whether it be to continue the wrestling team from Nazareth River or other methods that could be used for that building, because it probably still has some usefulness. And it's the community out there is very displeased with the city at this point. I know Heather's heard it. I've gotten many emails, and every time I run into a resident out there, I catch it in my eardrum. You can go to a ball team out there on a Saturday, which will be starting up this weekend, and all you're going to hear, if they find out you're an elected official, is, what are you doing with that rat nest that's sitting over there? People have done graffiti on it. They've done all kinds of things. The building is virtually doing nothing at all. That's something that we could get rid of and clean it up. The Freeney Avenue and Bright Street was a good move. I think that was a good move for both the city and the school system. But not to get Driver Elementary back like we were asked and we were told it was going to come back is not acceptable. It's inexcusable. I'm fighting for that school to come down. I'm fighting for our community. Our community speaks out about it, whether we go to their meetings, whether we're in the neighborhood. It's time to let it go. Do not hold that school as a placeholder so you can get the next property you're trying to get. The system here between the city and the school system for your new building is going to get worked on in good faith. So why we want to play that card the way we're playing it? I am totally unhappy with this situation. This is unacceptable. Don't tell me you're going to do something and give it to me by the end of April, and now we're going to change course. I'm not going with that plan. So that's all I got to say about it. You know, I like to work things out, but this school's got to come on the ground, and I'm done. Thank you.
Councilman Bennett.
I don't even know where to start. But anyway, I thank you, Dr. Gordon, for your presentation, your comments and all about future plans for what you going to need in the future. And I would just like to say, really, Freeney Avenue, that old school there, my wife taught there probably 35, 40, 30, I would say about 38 years ago. And you can tell how long that building has been there. And it wasn't new then. I was about 25 years old when she was teaching there. But I know it takes time with everything, but I don't know, it's first I heard about the time zone with the two buildings. So I'm sure that you'll be able to work at whatever you can to try to do the right thing, because I don't know what the building is used for. So I'm not familiar with the use of the building or anything like that, so I can't comment whether or not what condition that is. But I know what the Freeney Avenue building was like. And it's just, it's right in the neighborhood with a terrible eyesore. So I strongly support your plan with moving forward with that. And with that, I think, appreciate you for everything.
Dr. Brahan.
So I'm excited to see that the Feeney Avenue building is going to be replaced with the facility on where I know that's been in place for a while, and I'm happy that we were able to work that out with the city and get that moving forward. I'm going to weigh in a little bit on the Driver Elementary situation because I've had some conversations with my colleague Heather, and I've also had conversations with Councilman Fawcett. I've also had constituents from Driver who have emailed board members about the situation. And I'm concerned that we're using that as a pawn in a game, and it's not a tit for tat here. This property has needed serious dealings with for a long time based on information that has been provided. And we do want to retain the useful parts of it, the gym and the ball fields, but we need to get rid of the parts that are a lawsuit waiting to happen. And so I don't think that we should be using this as a pawn to get what we want for something else. I think this is a matter of, we've said for the better part of a decade that we were going to take care of this issue, and we haven't taken care of it. So I would be in support of turning this over to the city and allowing this to move forward. It's time. It's time. And trust is what's missing in this relationship. Trusting the city to take care of the needs of the school system, and vice versa in other situations. But in this situation, I'm going to speak to the trust. If we need something for the SAO offices, then we need to trust the city is going to provide for us and for that, and make sure that we have what we need. Withholding a property, trying to be, I'm going to stop there. Withholding the property is not the way to do this, I think. I think we need to go ahead and turn the property over and then move forward in good faith and in trust that we can take care of the other project that needs to be taken care of. Thank you.
Councilman Johnson?
I'll be real brief. This is really a no-brainer from a business perspective. City Manager Al, School Board Chair John, you guys are doing a good job. Fix it. It seems real simple. We need a new school board office building. If human resources doesn't work, it doesn't work. Professional business building doesn't work. We know it doesn't work. So we need to fix it. So we're going to fix it. Is there enough room on the site over here for the alternative site where the Mount Zion's old site? Is room for the next 40 years, 50 years? We got the property. We all work for the people of this city. I mean, honestly, every single person sitting around here. And we need to do what's in the best interest of the city. And I understand tit for tat and all of this and that and the other, but Roger's right about Driver. The people over there deserve this. And then we need to open it up. We're wasting time. We need to get the facility open and get kids out there playing ball. And as far as the other thing goes, you guys can do it. I have the utmost faith. Look at what we did on getting rid of Feeney Avenue. We've been talking about that for a while, too. So that's all I say. This is not a big deal. It's an easy deal to fix. So that's my proposal. Let's come up with the money, set it up for 4 years, and figure out how we're going to do it. Simple. Thank you.
Board Member Slingloff?
I really don't have any more additional comments to make. The only thing I would like to say is I am eager to have an opportunity to tour Bright Lane like you did before spring break. I think that's very exciting that it's a property that is so well suited for the school system. So, and I will echo several comments that Councilman Johnson has made. So.
Councilmember Butler Barlow.
Thank you. So, again, nothing completely new, but I do want to ask, so clearly where the school board offices, where the school administration offices are is not adequate. The human resources building is off the table. There's plenty of room at the other site. Are we looking at other possibilities? Do we have a list of options of where the administrative offices could go?
Well, we've had discussions I'm on the wrong color. We had discussions on some other options. Not all of them felt suitable to the superintendent and some of his staff. I mean, we one time talked about the Virginia pilot building. I think the key is, one thing I forgot to mention, within the CIP, we have $7.5 million in FY '27 and $7.5 million in FY '28 that was geared for, geared for the human resources building, similar to what the 6 that we had earlier that was city funding that we had there that we pushed towards the school to get JFK going, because that is a city asset over there. But, you know, my thought is that the time frame we had, we know we have 15 million that's in the CIP today that was going to be for the administration building if they went to the Health and Human Service building. So I'm looking at that, the time frame that we're talking about getting it ready this summer to the solution. We know that those years we need that funding because the lease is going to run out over at the 100 North Main, and we're going to have to get under construction at that time frame.
Yeah, and just to thank you for that, Mr. Moore, just to add to that, because I don't think it was clear on what I said. We need to have a concrete plan for the central office. It's not a tit for tat, it's not holding anything ransom. Because as the members of the school board that have been on this board longer than I have been here have also, you know, reminded me consistently that the Operations Center was also on the CIP for over a decade. And it's the same concept that we're looking at with Driver Elementary. Mr. Foster, you referenced the communication that I had with Mr. Moore about the month of April and the conversation I had with you. That was for Freeney Avenue. That wasn't for Driver. And that's part of the reason why we're talking about this today, because we said we was going to have it on the joint meeting for the agenda for the joint meeting for the day. So if we can have a set plan in place, to answer your question, Ms. Howe, the city manager and I, and based on feedback that I've had from conversations with you, conversations with Mr. Fawcett, we all agree that the gym would definitely stay. That's not a concern at all. The concern is the 2 for 2 that we're looking at was not the creation of the buildings when Florence Bowser was created. The 2 for 2 was, we have Freeney Avenue and Driver Elementary, we have Bright Lane, we have Central Office. That's what I'm referring to when I say the 2 for 2. So I like what Mr. Johnson said, because I know we can work this out. We're looking for a concrete date. That's all we're looking for, a concrete date for when the plan is going to be put in place since we gave up the money. And the Health and Human Services building is not completely off the table, because we know we had already actually done design work on that before we realized that we were about $6.5 million short for JFK. So that's not completely off the table, but when the city manager alerted me that things were getting packed over here, that's when we began to look at other options. So as soon as the city manager and I can work out a date and a plan for what's going to happen and when, because we've had handshake agreements, we've had discussions from 10, 15 years ago, but unless we have a concrete date in mind, so then we can tell our staff that's sitting 4 people in an office, right? So that we can tell our staff we're only going to be in this building X number of years. As soon as that date occurs, then I would have the conversation with the school board chair and potentially recommend to the board to turn over Driver. So all we're looking for is something in writing, letting us know when that process is going to start.
So can I, that went a lot of different directions. I guess what I'm looking at is we've got the 15 million, and we have a building site, but we're not going to build a new building for $15 million. And, you know, could we find a space that the city owns? And I know we talked about, Al and I talked about renovating another space that's currently available to speed up the timeline, because, you know, I mean, if we're talking about a whole entirely new facility, that's a whole lot more money, correct? Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm not.
Yeah, we're definitely open to that, Ms. Butler-Barlow.
Yeah.
And it was almost, the money was almost lining up, and that's why Mr. Moore had mentioned the 7.5, because the original phase 2 of the Operations Center was right around 15 million or so.
Right.
But if there's another facility that's out there that can definitely suit our needs, especially when it comes to parking, the manager's right about the concern with parking that we had, the Health and Human Resources building, that would be something we would definitely be able to look at. We just want to know when.
Right. But I have to echo Councilman Johnson. I know y'all can figure this out, so I look forward to the solution. Thanks.
Board Member Byram?
Yes, I've been on this board quite a long time, and Dr. Gordon sort of mentioned the fact that we tossed around where the administration building would be. It's been over here, over there, over here, over there. The whole time I've been on the board, it's been discussed. And we know North Main is not adequate, for our needs. We're cramped. Many of our people work, as he said, 3 or 4 in an office, cramped quarters. We need more room. My question is, and I applaud the Freeney Avenue elimination and the Bright Lane. I think that's a wonderful idea. I'm glad that's worked out. My question is, as Ms. Barlow said, are there other sites that are being looked at that are adequate? And my question to our superintendent, too, is the Mount Zion site, Dr. Gordon, is there ample land there? How many acres? I once heard something about 11 acres out there, something like that. Is that what we have out there that we're dealing with? And with what we already have there, is that an adequate site to even consider, at this point? And we need to find a place immediately, I think, because it's been tossed around too long. And as Mr. Moore said, the city manager, we're going to have to move on this very quickly to get it accomplished. And it takes time. And as we speak, the price of everything goes up. So we need to consider all of those factors as we move forward. This has been an issue that has not been resolved over the years, and it needs to be resolved immediately. And there are some of my concerns.
Yes, Ms. Byron, we believe that we would have enough space to have the central office basically be behind the current operations center connected to it. We believe that it would be a 2-story site, and being able to clear additional land out there in order to make room for the parking. We haven't asked any of our architectural firms that we partner with to give us a clear design, because we wanted to wait on the school board potentially making a decision on that in the very near future. But the rough sketch, and when they went over there to take a look, they believed that we would have enough room to build a central office connected to the current operations center.
Okay, thank you.
Tara?
Wow, so much I can say. What I will say is this. It's new to me that we are considering moving the school administrative building from where it was planned to be. I think if parking is an issue, you can absorb the baseball field, but parking is an issue in downtown, and I think that's something that we need to look realistically at. Once upon a time, there was a plan for a parking garage in downtown that a study suggested. That wasn't followed through with. It would be my recommendation that maybe we need to revisit that if parking is the determining factor as to whether we move from a plan that already has funding allocated to it or not. As it involves the Driver Elementary School turning over, me personally, I'm not for turning over any properties at this given time. I believe that those properties can be repurposed to service a benefit for us both. I believe that we could repurpose Driver Elementary School into a primary school with a joint use recreation center site that addressed the vacant building. As it was stated, the building probably still has some usefulness to it. I believe that we can still add that usefulness to relieve some of the overcrowding in the northern corridor of our schools by turning that into a primary school, removing pre-K out of the schools that are close by, and still addressing with a better parking lot and still allowing recreation to take place at that property. I am concerned that we're kind of moving kind of hastily to make some very impactful decisions. And I would ask that the board, we come back and we have a discussion about this before we make any solid commitments, and that concludes my comments at this time.
Councilmember Rector?
Thank you. I guess one of the advantages of being last is that there's very little that hasn't already been said. So I'm not going to rehash a bunch of the arguments, but being sort of the new kid on the block, as it were, I guess it gives me a little bit of a different perspective on some of these issues because unlike some of the veterans around this table, I haven't been fighting these battles for the last 10, 15, 20 years. At first I was a little disappointed to hear that we've got assets in the city, either owned by the city or owned by the school board, that are being treated like Pokemon playing cards. And, you give me this, I'll give you that. You give me this, I'll give you that. But I think Dr. Gordon sort of cleared that perception up for me, and I was glad that he did that. From what I'm hearing, a lot of the discussion around whether to turn Driver Elementary back over to the city is a little bit of a trust issue. The city hasn't done this, so we're not going to do that. The school board hasn't followed through with this, so the city's not going to do that. I'm not sure that taking an asset like Driver Elementary, and I personally have not toured the building, so I'm going to take it on face value what people are saying about the condition of the building. But to conflate that with and associate it with, okay, we got to fix the office space. I'm not 100% sure that that is going to move the trust needle between the two of us. To echo what Councilman Johnson said, whether it's the administration building downtown that we're not going to be renovating, or whether it's Driver Elementary that is not being used anymore and is a legitimate potential safety hazard. They're all City of Suffolk properties. We may be two different boards. We're elected independently, but we all serve the City of Suffolk. So I agree with Councilman Johnson. I think we can figure out a way to do this without necessarily holding properties future in abeyance for potential decisions being made. So, if Driver Elementary needs to be torn down, if the school board doesn't want to turn it over to the city, they should tear it down. But I think it would probably be a lot better if it was turned back over to the city, let the city tear it down, and if at some point in the future it wanted to be repurposed for some school project, some school building, that could be addressed at that time. But I do think that something needs to be done with that building because, as was said over here on this side of the table, it's a liability issue, and somebody ultimately is going to get hurt, and none of us want to see that happen.
Board Member Dr. Blunt.
Thank you. The good news about being a teacher, and I'm not a history teacher at the table, Phyllis is, but history is a good thing. It really is. At the same time that the properties were promised, the other side promised the properties. We are two co-equal bodies, and understanding our roles makes a difference. And so let me just give you a little lesson in history for our new board members who may not be aware. At the same time that we started the Mount Zion project, which is where the operations center was, the discussion and that human resources, when I came on the board, the human resources building, there was a discussion because the money that we used to buy the furniture that is now in Southwestern Elementary School was the monies that we had asked for council to use from the furniture allotment that we were supposed to be buying furniture for the human resources building. That was in January 2014, when I first started serving on the board. That is the time that council promised that we would be using that building instead of using the 100 North Main Street building. It was also discussed that we were staying downtown to increase the footprint of traffic downtown so that we could improve the Suffolk Business District. We never talked about going out to Mount Zion to have a central office out there, and I'm amazed as we sit here and talk about building a building out there when we had to use the maintenance money to build an addition to a school that we were always talking about building addition to. I'm sorry. We have to take it back to there because we need to understand the history in order to understand where we're going. And if you don't know your history, you will go forward blindly and make a lot of mistakes. The other thing that people talk about is what they want to do with Driver. There were 2 schools out there. Florence Bowser Elementary replaced Florence Bowser Elementary. Florence Bowser Elementary was used as an early childhood center because it wasn't big enough to have the 3 through 5 that Driver housed. So we split 2 schools, which should have been 1 school, but we had split it because we had to. We had no choice. And we use it for storage. We also used it for our teacher store to give supplies there and to do some other things. So it's not just an empty building sitting there that nobody uses to hold for anybody. I, for one, would have loved to give it away if we ever finished the Mount Zion project that had been started way back before I started and approved, way back before I even joined the board in 2014. And here we are 12 years later, still talking about finishing something. So I, for one, with Dr. Gordon, would like to have a date for when we're going to finish, because all of Freeney Avenue, all of what is at Driver was supposed to go into the new building that has never been finished. Trust is a wonderful thing, but if we sit here blindly waiting for something to finish, that every board member, every council member except you was on there when I joined. All of us came here together. Some of us came here together. Some of you might have been here before me, Mr. Bennett. But the rest of you all, we were here together. And so to act like we don't understand what's going on, we do understand what's going on. We understand what's going on. It is clear, except for our new members. You may not, but we do. We need to keep our word. And our word was that we were supposed to have the human resources building. The storage facilities were supposed to be given to us. We have no problem turning over old schools. I don't want to keep Driver Elementary, but I want to have space to put the stuff that we have in it. I don't want to keep paying $500,000 a year to rent a building that's inadequate for us. We don't want to do that either, but we know we can't have a new building built out on 460 because it's not going to happen anytime soon. We know how long it takes to get stuff built. We don't have any more money to give up to even finish the projects that we want to finish. So let's be real about what we're going to do. I'm glad that we made the transfer from Freeney Avenue and we're going to give it up. Glad to give it up. But let's finish what we started and keep our word. The best way to build trust is to keep your word. And the word was that you all were going to finish that project out at 460, which has not been finished yet. And so not to finish that and then to sit here and say, oh, we're going to give you another whole building behind that in I don't know when. It's just really hard to believe. And again, the object of keeping us downtown was to increase the footprint downtown, which everybody thought was a great idea. The last thing I'm going to say is that Suffolk is the only place I've ever been where people spend time saying negative things about their public schools. The other cities that don't even have schools as good as ours. We have a National Blue Ribbon School. We do in Suffolk. Virginia Beach is the only one in the other area that has one. They have 70,000 kids. We have 14,000. And we have one. They have one. In this state, we only had 7. And instead of us bragging, we tear down our public schools. That's a sad thing. That's a sad commentary for this city. It really is. It really is. And that really bothers me. But where we can come together and do some positive things, we ought to. And keeping our word, building trust, comes from keeping our word to each other. And we haven't kept our word. And that, Dr. Brittingham, is where the trust is. Keeping our word to one another. That's where trust begins, keeping your word. And if we can keep our word, we can move forward with trust. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Madam Chair.
It's hard to follow that.
Yeah, it's hard
Anyway,
to follow that in it.
Superintendent, I want to ask you a question. You said on Bright Lane, you like that Bright Lane deal? And I've been 12 years. I'd like to thank you and Al for agreeing on that, because I've been here and we haven't agreed on too much. And as a city council, we had instructed the city manager, talk to the superintendent, and let's get it done. Because we didn't want that negativity going out around all other cities. I wasn't going to say nothing today, but I'm going to say this. I had something else I wanted to talk, but I'm going to talk with y'all guys about it. Thank y'all so much for agreeing on that. Thank you so much. I've been waiting for that for a long time, and thank you so much. When people, what Dr. Buck just said, when you talk about trust, first you got to respect. You're not going to trust somebody you don't respect, okay? I wanted to say a whole lot, but I'm telling you two guys, thank y'all so much for doing what y'all did. And that's what leadership about, to lead and do what's best for your city, the kids, and what's going on. Thank y'all so much.
Madam Chairman?
Thank you, Mayor Dooman. There's been some great discussions here, and I thank you, Dr. Buck, for that history lesson, because I think a lot of people did not know the history of what actually went on. And I want to say that what bothered me about the conversation, first of all, you're right. We're adults, and these two should work together, and I believe they can do that to get it done. But I don't like the word that pawn and games. I call it negotiation. That's what we do in the business world. So I don't think Dr. Gordon's statement or what he said meant that he was playing games or he was using as a pawn. It's a basic negotiation. That's what we do in business. And we should want the same thing, because like you said, Vice Mayor, it's about our kids, it's about the school system, those who work, and the city working together. And we can do that. So it's not holding this until you give me that. It's negotiation. And Dr. Brooks Buck said that this was promised to us a long, long time ago. Maybe you all didn't know that, but now you do know. So hopefully you have gained your education in what has come down the pipeline. And I am glad that we have moved forward with Freeney Avenue as well. I would love to see our admin team in a really nice building, and Suffolk is huge. It should be somewhere here that they can be, and it would be a great place where they can do their work and be comfortable and be safe. And I look forward to us negotiating, not playing games, but negotiating to get this done. And of course, Driver, we all know about Driver. I live down that way, so I see Driver all the time. And I know it's prudent at this time. This is election year. So we know some things need to be done quickly. And we're going to do what we have to do when we come together and make those decisions between our superintendent and city manager. And just like Mr. Riddick said, we as a school board, there's a lot of options here that he named that we can do to help one another and get things done. So I'm looking forward to that with an open mind, and all of us need to have an open mind about the things that we can do to make sure that we move forward in a positive way so the city can get what they want and the school board can get what we need. Thank you.
Red, green. I'm green. Okay, just listening to the conversation going around the table in regards to Nansemond Elementary. Driver Elementary. Let's trade something. I'm negotiating there. Driver Elementary. The Freeney Avenue, Bright Lane, that was a good, excellent move. I'm glad that we got together on that. Some of the conversation that we've had, I think we've lost sight of several things. Number one, as far as the professional building is concerned, I can tell you that 10 years ago, I was screaming like a banshee that we had to renew that lease. And 5 years after that, I was screaming like a banshee. One night, Councilman Bennett was in there, and I said, let's do something else. So the idea that we don't understand, I mean, not only is that not an exceptionally good deal for the school system because it's not adequate for your purposes, from a fiscal standpoint, it's not the best thing either. But the reality of the situation is, money's not everything, but it helps. We only have so much money. When we're talking about what happened and what didn't happen, the capital improvements and the plan itself is a long-range plan. So we're all very eager to say, oh my God, inflation has been terrible. Everything's gone up from this much to that much. Well, when plans are made for projects that are 4 and 5 and 6 years out, just like you experience, we experience that through the city also. So the money that we've come up with to fund your projects, and let's just use JFK for example. Anybody looked at the first number on that one? How much was that?
50 million.
About $43 million is where it started.
Elementary.
Thereabouts before, we got the rest of it. We ended up at 74. We got 15 million from the state, but my bottom line is, that's what happens to numbers. So it's not a matter of whether, you infer that council is not acting in good faith because certain things didn't come to fruition within the time frame that you thought that they should be. But at the same time, we have to take into consideration what has happened and what we're capable of doing. So there's a difference between acting in good faith and then intentionally misleading people and not doing what we promised to do. I don't know about anybody else, but I don't think we promised anything in the capital improvement plan except for that first year. That's what's in the budget. And the rest of it is contingent upon a lot of other things. Another thing, if you want to look at things, we need to look at how the preferences of the school board has changed over the last 10 years. How you rated your projects, what you wanted to do. Northern Shores wasn't way up there 5 or 6 years ago. It was kind of down the road. There was a trade-off made. The Health and Human Services building in the CIP, if I'm not mistaken, was originally scheduled to be about $5 or $6 million. That $5 or $6 million turned into a $13 million request, which turned into a $9 million request. So there's a lot of variables there. It's not like we're dealing with a finite number that this is what it is, and you're going to get that 3 years down the line. All of that is contingent upon the changing resources of the city and the changing wants of the school board. You change your wants as you go on, based on your needs, and we understand that. So the flip side of the coin was, well, you told us you wanted this 5 years ago. That's the way it is. We're not moving anything around. We're not taking money from there to pay there because you've changed your options. So we need to look at it from both sides of the coin. The key when it comes to trust is that there's everything you do, you want to try to do in good faith, knowing that sometimes it's just not going to work out that way. And I don't think we need to be we don't need to be in the negotiating process. We need to just be working together and come up with the results that are best for our citizens. And right now, Driver Elementary is sitting there, and Councilman Fawcett is correct. I mean, I got calls on it 2 years ago about cars parked up on the curb in unsafe conditions with the kids. So while we're holding Driver Elementary as leverage, it has an adverse effect on our citizens. It's their investment, whether they're invested in the school system or whether they're invested in city property, or residents, or citizens, or taxpayers. They are the owners of that property. And we're not going to do them any service by letting it sit there long enough that we come up with a plan. We don't even know what the plan's going to be. Everybody's all over the place. I mean, we're talking about doing the operations center, which is doing the administrative building behind the operations center. And it's, if we can make that work, would be a pretty nice administrative offices. I mean, we've got the room there, we've got the property. Now, is it feasible to do it? We got $15 million in the CIP we can put somewhere. I would rather find some additional money to build a new operations center, if we can, on that Mount Zion property, than to put it into the Human Resources Building, which you're basically going to outgrow when you get there. You know, with where it's located and the parking issues, I mean, just to expand the parking lot's about $1 million, I think, to fill the ditch in, so we can create some more parking. So let's have an honest discussion about what options, let's get an option on the table as soon as we can, to accommodate the school system's needs in regards to administrative building. But I don't see how we can hold use Drivers Elementary as leverage if we're all going to act in good faith. We don't need any leverage. Everybody understands that you need a place to go. God knows I want you to be out of that building. I mean, I even had to talk with the owner one time of the building, or one of the owners on it, that you get to work a different deal. This is ridiculous. But obviously they're holding, and we need to do something pretty quick, because what happens is when this discussion comes up, we got a 5-year lease, it's going to be hard to find something, just like everybody indicated. Okay, we're going to do this, and can we make it happen within the 5 years so we don't have to renew the lease again for another 5 years? So it can't be anything that gets put on the back burner. We have to have some type of resolution. And if that doesn't work, personally, I hope we can find the funding to get it into the CIP to do a new building. But if we can't, then maybe we go back to the Health and Human Resources building. I mean, not the Health and the Human Resources building. But we need to do something, because Lord knows I do not want to renew that lease again. So let's just put everything into perspective. I don't know. There's a lot of different variables there. You know, we've talked about trust. We've talked about having open communication. Then if we've got trust and we got open communication, we shouldn't be using leverage for negotiations. We should just be using that. We should be making data-driven decisions that get the best results for the school system while being fiscally responsible and having it done in the most efficient, expeditious manner that we possibly can. And I don't think anybody on council has a problem with that. So with that being said, I don't know where we're going with the discussion down the road, but I would suggest that the manager and superintendent have some more discussion, and then they in turn bring it back to their respective bodies so we can talk about it some more and try to get something definitive on the table. But I do not think that the driver elementary transfer needs to be held up and be used as leverage to ensure that we come up with a timetable. I mean, we're dancing around it, but that's what it is. So, does anybody have any other comments? If not, we will move to the enforcement camera revenue and funded school safety projects. Mr. Manager.
Okay, moving into, thank you, into the next topic. Again, the chair, at our meeting with the mayor and the superintendent and myself, requested that we have something on about the enforcement cameras, the revenues in school safety projects. But what I'll start with the first slide is where we're at, and these numbers are, I think, based on February's number. They are. I need someone to advance. There we go. Right now, total anticipated revenues a little under $16 million. That's citations issued. Of course, we've collected a little short of $11 million at this time. The operating expenditures is a little less than $3 million. That is the amount that the people are running our program for. Now, one thing I want to point out real quickly, this is a declining revenue stream. When we started out with speed cameras on 58 and on 460, we had, I'm thinking around 18,000. I actually brought it. Okay, we went on Holland from about 13,000, excuse me, now we're down to 3,000. So you can see, safety is being taken seriously here. It's doing the job we want it to do. It's slowing people down, it's eliminating wrecks. So this is not a revenue maker, even though we had some offshoot of revenue here. But so our remaining balance out of what's collected is about 8 million. We have taken our first project we brought forth to council a little while back, and we had two elements. One is to adjust some of the cameras and the flashing lights. We took over the school zones also so we could manage it because they needed upgrading, and we needed to make sure everything was working appropriately with the speed cameras. So we did that, and so we upgraded some of the flashers and the signals. We have the first project, and we heard about this on the opening day of school this year, was the crosswalk need at Kings Fork High and Kings Fork Middle out there. So that was the first project right off that we were wanting to fund. And that, of course, is going to have to be done, a lot of it off school time. So I believe I think, Dr. Gordon, he really didn't do anything in spring break, so I think we're looking at the summertime, I believe, right? They started some work there. Okay, thank you. The second phase of work that we're talking about, and of course, we bring this forth to the safety committee that we have here at the city, which includes Dr. Gordon sits on that safety committee on various projects. So the next project that we brought forth is the train information program. And this is a program that's going to help us tell where trains are coming at, what locations they may be, as we may be able to forecast crossing closings and like. And this will go towards our emergency response for fire and ambulance. We also are looking at preemptive upgrades to our emergency vehicles, and that's where they can control the lights as they go. That's 215, the first is 250. And then, of course, Dr. Gordon brought forth four schools that needed some sidewalk upgrades, and we've included that. And that's just part one, I believe, isn't it? So, and that's 125,000. This list is going to council for appropriations this coming Wednesday. And then we have sidewalks on Shoulders Hill, Araby Road area. Of course, bulletproof vests, sidewalk conditions, Kings Highway. And here's one that's important to the schools also, and this is the explosive detection canines. As of yesterday, you had a bomb threat at Oakland, was it? Mm-hmm. At Oakland. And these are becoming more and more frequent, unfortunately. And so one before that was it at Lakeland, that they were out in the rain before the buses could get it. So the problem is we have to call in the Coast Guard, or Portsmouth or the state police to get the canines here to sweep the building. So what we're doing here, the city is going to purchase 2 canines, one for our fire marshal's office, one for the police department, that are bomb detect canines. I've learned that you can't just get one dog to sniff everything. They're specialized. So that's in here, and that's 30,000. About time you train them up, they're about 15,000 each. And then we have a guardrail at Mill Street. Now this $791,000 is just the first phase of things we're doing, and we'll be coming up with projects. There's some turn lanes, there's other projects that we need to do to safety up our highways and our streets and our pedestrian areas. So I just wanted to point out what that is. It's we have our revenues, we have expenditures. I will point out again, we can only take construction zones of those speed cameras. We cannot place speed cameras across the city. It only can be in construction zones or in school zones. We do have them on the school buses for the flashers. That program itself, if you just took that school, the flashing part of it, is you're spending more than receiving, because the violations are not, you're having them. It surprises me of many that we have, but it doesn't cover the cost of operation. So really, the school zone and the work zone cameras cover the operational costs of that. I didn't want to forget to mention that. But we feel, or I feel, that having them on school bus is an asset too. So whether it costs us more or not, it's, as long as the whole program is self-sufficient. So I just want to go over this and I hope I covered for some of the things the chair was asking for.
Thank you, because I did have a lot of people asking me, you know what, because it's been all over the news, how much money Suffolk has been gaining from these cameras. And so it's like, what is the city doing with the money? Plus, you know, they were on our property. So I wanted to see if we were able to, you know, get any resources or anything done for our school based on the revenue. So I appreciate that. Appreciate you doing that.
I'm going to go ahead and interject something in regards to the cameras themselves and then how that funding becomes part of our safety committee or public safety committee. The public safety committee was formed actually before we had speed cameras and knew there was going to be any revenue. So it's just, I guess the man upstairs had it all figured out. So the intent of the safety committee was to be able to communicate with our citizens, to find out from them exactly what they felt they needed in their individual communities to address safety issues not just being crime, but other related safety issues. And then we would look for the funds or set aside funds to be able to accomplish some of those, or be able to solve or address some of those issues, I should say. Now, when the enforcement cameras came on, the original intent kind of was just to use it for roads more than anything else. Keep in mind that when it was brought to our attention as to how the enforcement program worked, which is totally state regulated, as the manager alluded to, it can only be in work zones right now, it can only be in school zones, and then there's stoplight cameras. The stoplight cameras are limited to 10%, I think, of the population or something.
One for every 10,000.
Yeah, so we got 9 now. I guess we could probably go to 10. We can't put stoplight cameras on everyone. That's the state code. That's a $50 fine. That's set. The speed enforcement cameras can only go in those zones. You must be going a minimum of 10 miles an hour over the speed limit to receive a citation. It must be appropriately posted, and the maximum fine is $100. All this is by state code. So basically all we do is strictly follow the code according to Commonwealth of Virginia and what's allowed. Now, how does it work? We're going to talk about money. We have a contract with this company right here, Mint. I originally thought it was a breath mint or something, but it has to do with speed cameras. Mint is the company, Altumint, that administers this program for us. We have a contract with that company. It's X number of dollars per speed enforcement device, maybe $3,500 or $3,800. I don't have the exact numbers, but there's a set number. The agreement is the initial money received through citations, 100% of it goes to payment of that contract off the top. So let's just round off some numbers and say the contract's $100,000 a month based on the services that they're providing, which also includes admin and some other things, but it takes $100,000 a month to satisfy that contract. Once $100,000 is received in citation funds to go towards that contract, then the city receives the addition over that. The important caveat when this was presented is that that $100,000 contract if they only issue $80,000 worth of citations or receive that month, the city has no liability. So it's guaranteed to be revenue neutral. So it's absolutely no cost to the city. So when you look at it from that standpoint, and the fact that we do have, I mean, during construction time, I remember talking to Councilman Johnson, it's still going on, about the rate of the traffic that's going through there. There were some serious safety issues in getting out on the road. So obviously it seemed like a no-brainer, and it got a unanimous vote. So there's all these theories about percentages of tickets. The company can also not be reimbursed. There is no incentive for them to maximize the number of citations. They don't get paid like $10 a citation. It's whatever it is. So that takes care of that. So the initial, as manager also alluded to, so that we didn't budget for any income because it didn't make any difference to us. This wasn't about money. This was about safety. So we're guaranteed that a third party can administer a program to help regulate, enforce the speed limit without costing us a nickel, without us taking 10 more officers off the street and put them out there with radar guns to give individuals tickets for $500 a pop to speeding in a work zone, and keep them away from other duties that may be more pressing concerning the addressing crime issues that are much more important than speeding. So, anyhow, but what happened is it took a little while for everybody to figure it out. So as the manager said, we started off with X number of dollars, or with, actually 113 was 15,000 citations the first month. We did a 30-day trial period where everybody just got a warning, and I remember the representative from the company said he'd been doing this a long time. It's the most he'd ever seen on a out of the gate type thing. So now we've gone from 15,000 to 3,000. So every single one of these camera zones is down from anywhere from 78% to 83%. I did all the math the other day, even in the school zones, from 78% to 83%. So the big money that you're looking at, that $5 million last month, I think it was less than $1 million. It was $900 and some thousand worth of money. So that money is going into a fund to be spent on addressing public safety concerns that will be basically recommended with the city manager. The city manager and the committee will recommend to council what to spend that money on. As the manager also mentioned, Dr. Gordon is on the Public Safety Committee as well, and the first initiatives came out here are going towards the schools. And if we want, in my way of thinking is that there's not much, I can't think of anything more important than protecting kids. I don't think anybody else can either. So, believe me, the money coming off the top should go to the schools. But it is a citywide income. It's not an exclusive income. I mean, if we did budgeting like that for everything, y'all be in pretty bad shape. If the only thing we're worried about is where the money came from. If you weren't generating the money, you don't get any. It's really not how it works. It's a city project going into a city fund to be used for a specific purpose. Another caveat to this particular financing is we cannot budget for it each year like we do everything else. Like when we anticipate meals tax or anything else, it's a forecasted number. So the only money we're going to spend with this, because it's not anything we can forecast, we don't know what it's going to be, we will be spending money one year, the money from the year it was collected. So the money that'll go into budget is money already collected from the prior year. So we'll have a finite amount. Another thing that hasn't been brought up right now, and I don't know where that's going to go, but recently there was a lawsuit. There's a lawsuit been filed in court by, don't bring it up anyhow. But there has been a lawsuit filed in court. I mean, it's public information. I'm sure it'll be all over the place, whether it has any validity to it or not. So that, trying to make a case that they're not legal for some reason. So I'm a little concerned because I don't think we need to be spending a bunch and then find out we get to give everybody their money back, because that's part of the suit. I don't think it'll happen, but I think we need to be somewhat cautious. What do you think?
Well, you're not helping the city attorney.
I'm not helping the city attorney. That's just my opinion. It's off the record with no legal advice. So that's just mine. Would you like to chime in there, Mr. Secretary? He's already mad at me. I'll be chastised severely after the meeting, but I can take it. So anyhow, I just put it out there. We shouldn't be talking about it because it's an ongoing case, right? Okay. All righty. So maybe that explains the enforcement cameras a little bit. And that wasn't all for your benefit. I just like putting it out there all the time because it's like the gift that never.
I wanted you to put it out.
It's the gift that never stops giving. Next week, 5 people will ask me about what we're doing with the money that we got. Oh, and I forgot one other thing. That's exactly right. Of the citations issued, of all the citations issued, 81% of them were not Suffolk residents. 81%. Only 19% of violations were actually issued to Suffolk residents. So they went to folks that were flying through our city or trucks going back and forth to the port. So when you put everything in perspective, you know, the program is doing what it's supposed to do. The school zone, I do the Kings Fork, I do the Kings Fork school zone every morning. Man, you guys didn't have school last week. It didn't make any difference. They were still doing whatever. I went behind a lady doing 14 miles an hour. But we're moving on. Okay, let's go to our next issue. You brought it up, so it's your fault. Okay, we're now going to go to elementary school options, Elephant Fork and Kilby Shores. And Mr. Manager?
Yes, and really, of course, for the chair and the board and Dr. Gordon, I'm going to start off saying I stole some of your slides from Dr. Littlefield on your rezoning efforts as part of this presentation, which I found pretty interesting that you had on March 14th. But again, going back to the previous presentation, I'm the type of person that wanted to keep my eyes open for options. What are our options, you know, as we move forward? I know there's history, but I want to make sure that I'm looking peripheral and everything as we move ahead on options, and that we don't miss one. So looking at this, and this is more for council as we move to the next slide. Thank you in the back who's telling me I didn't have my mic. Test.
It's green.
It's green. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. The first slide that we have here, of course, is talking about your efforts on rezoning the 7 elementary schools for school year 2025-2026, which I found interesting as you're trying to meet the needs of your requirements through the Justice Department. What I've done on this first slide, without reading all through it, I looked at your website, the purpose of it. But one thing, as we look at it, it looks at the schools where they are today and not any potential if one moves. It's also, as Dr. Gordon said during the presentation, if a new school is built, it should be built in the zone. I want to recognize that statement as I go along. On the next slide is Mr. Littlefield's other slide where he showed the changes in the school zone. And really where I'm headed here is a discussion on Lake Kilby and Elephant's Fork. So you'll see the zones here have been changed to help meet the percentages of in the school zone. The Black or African American percentages, as we looked, there was 3 schools, as you pointed out, that were of concern, and that would be Booker T, Mac Ben, and of course Southwestern, as you look at those percentages. Now, with the proposal, you've met those tests, and the only school there, when I look at the capacity issue change, was there's only one school, because really I was looking at more from a capacity element, Southwestern is just a tad bit above. But when I look at this next slide came out of the cooperative, the study that we had by Cooperative Strategies a few years ago on the population growth. And right now, looking at your elementary schools, you're actually, for the 5-year mark, which we would be in it from the study, we're actually below that growth in the population. But really moving to the point of what I'm getting at, Elephant's Fork, where it's located, creates, in our opinion, the city's opinion, safety issues, because when the kids are being picked up, the cars are backing up. Parents tend to drop and pick up kids more than they did when I grew up. So you're seeing issues on Route 10 on Main Street as where the school location. Now, obviously, Elephant's Fork is the next school up in our CIP. It is scheduled to be funded in FY28 through FY30. So I think what I'm getting to is, looking at this location, we, on the city staff, feels that the Elephant's Fork should be in a different location due to the impacts along Route 10. The capacity per, the recent seating capacity per the figures is 526. You have a population of 638 based on the numbers in the graph from your March 14th. We got 10, 11 trailers. I point out the access is limited to one way in, one way out, and we have peak traffic backups on Route 10. Your future proposal you have in the FY25 redistricting population is 523, so it's been reduced. The new elementary school, as I've said, is funded between FY28 and FY30. The proposed seating for that new school in the CIP is 800. That's what the CIP says you're building at 800 school. And we're at proposing 523, and we're under the growth rate of the cooperative strategy study. So there could be a potential, say it grows to 600 capacity, of 200 extra seats there. Kilby Shores, similar location, not quite as bad as Elephant's Fork, but it sits on the corner in Kilby Shores, and it's right there on Turlington, where you're making your move towards the Southwest Bypass if you're coming from downtown. So you've got a lot of traffic activity on a one-way entrance into a neighborhood that comes back and forth. So again, looking at seating capacity of 533 there today, a population of 473. I counted 8 trailers in the picture. Kilby Shore is limited to one way in, one way out. And again, peak traffic backups onto Kilby Shore Drive. Future, you're looking at 437 in this redistricting. You're talking about a new Lake Kilby School, elementary school, at 800 seat capacity. Again, as I look at the numbers, this could be, if you even got to 500, you're still talking about 300 extra seats here. So when we look at the total Kilby Shores population today is 960 students, and this is just considerations. We talk about numbers here. But option one is, of course, you build it back, you build 2 schools, hopefully not in the same location, but if you build 2 schools, you're talking about 600 seating capacity in those 2 schools with a population right now of 960 students. The cost in the CIP today for those 2 schools is $110 million. In option 2, if you decided to build one school centrally located, looking at your percentages in your student population mix, it doesn't change that because both of them are about the same of where the redistricting is. But if you take that and you prorate the number of seats to the 800 seat school, you're looking around the area of $70 million based on today's numbers, and we're really talking about a look at the proportions here, of what we're doing. This would be similar, I believe, Dr. Gordon, the addition to Northern Shores is what, 400 seats? 400 seats, and you have a population there of 723 or 713. So you're talking about Northern Shores is going to be a 1,000-seat school. So if you built 1,000-seat school, similar to what you would have at Northern Shores, based on prorating the numbers, you're around 70 million. Or option 3, you consider one 800-seat school centrally located in addition to either Southwestern or another abutting school. Yeah, you would have to probably now look at this as part of a rezoning effort. The first two wouldn't really require, it's more of a merging. The second one is. But if you take in the CIP, you take your dollar value you have for the addition at Nansmith River High School, and you add it to one of the 800-seat elementary schools, trying to make what that total cost would be, you'd be looking at around 91 million. So I put this out there. You know, I know you're working hard and getting your rezonings done for the reasons you need to get them done, and I think it's a great effort, but I just took those numbers, and again, going back to my introductory statements of not missing, you know, being my eyes wide open and trying not miss a potential option. And I know this consolidation has not always been a favorite discussion, but I just throw that out there, and maybe I run for cover now, but just for discussion purposes.
All right, thank you. And Mr. Moore, he's right where this originally came from our one option C from the 2021 facility study. And I'm glad that he had the slide up there that shows 960 seats. But we have to give the full breakdown. So we built a school at 1,000. This means we have a total of 40 seats. And using the mayor's terminology, this means the school's at capacity as soon as it opens. So elementary school, K through 5, if we follow that model there, this basically means that we would not have at least one classroom per grade level for growth. K through 5, one classroom per grade level of growth, that's 150 seats. Now, that's for one school. The fact that we're combining two schools to do this actually means we need 2 classrooms per grade level. So that's 300 seats. And we haven't even talked about pre-K. And all of our schools have multiple pre-K classrooms. So that's at least 2 more, so that's 50 more seats times 2, that's another 100 seats. So now we're up to 1,400. So the challenge that we're looking at here is there is no room for growth. Your level of growth multiplies when you're putting 2 schools together, and I have not found one school in the Commonwealth of Virginia that has an enrollment of 1,500 at the elementary level. The second part is what we kind of talked about at the last joint meeting is that's under the assumption that we're using 25 to 1 for all classrooms. But the K through 3 model does not allow us to have 25 students per classroom. The lower the grade, the less number of kids. So for example, in our kindergarten classrooms, we're looking at around 18 to 1. So those actually change what we're looking at when it comes to option 2 of having a 1,000-seat school. Mr. Moore is correct about once we get these extra classrooms in Northern Shores, there will be close to 1,000. But also referring back to that same facility study, we're not looking at additional growth in Northern Shores. And out of the 20 classrooms that are being added, 11 of those will encompass the trailers that are already there. So we're actually only adding 9 classrooms based on current capacity. So Mr. Moore is correct when he says that he wanted to run for cover because he knew that I was going to push back on these options. And I understand the city's perspective because we have to be able to show the public the different potential costs that it has for a school. The biggest challenge that we're going to have, and this is conversations that we had at the last meeting when Mr. Riddick and I had several conversations about this, is the actual functional capacity of the schools. And that's where you actually get into the maximum amount of the ratio that you can have in each grade level. So if we were looking at a 1,500 capacity school, we are actually more expensive than option 1 if we had to add the square footage to add 10 additional classrooms minimum in order to have any level of growth for the schools. So my support is always going to be for option 1. Now, I will give this caveat. We have, all of us, and I think don't mind speaking for the board here, all of us have had concerns about the location of Elephants Fork for the traffic side. that's something that we would definitely be willing to look at, having a potential different location. We also, when we had our Take Your Legislator to School Day, we also had a conversation with Mr. Johnson about once we do begin to rebuild Kilby Shores and Forest Glen, the possibility of putting both of those on the same site because there is more room there. That would also save the city funds in doing that. That would be, in my opinion, a good compromise instead of combining Kilby Shores and Elephant's Fork, is taking a look of how much money we could save by having one location for Kilby Shores and Forest Glen, two separate buildings on the same campus-style site. We believe that we can probably save the city at least $10 million in doing that. And so that potentially could be option 4, Mr. Moore, up there for future considerations, something to take a look at. But realistically, I can't support having an elementary school with 1,100 seats to begin with, but realistically being 1,500 seats for capacity if we were combining two schools. Thanks.
Dr. Gordon, may I ask you to address option 3?
You mean option 4?
Well, the addition.
Yeah, so the addition also will mean another potential rezoning that you just mentioned. And as a reminder, when Mr. Moore did contact me to get the presentation that we did at the last school board meeting, our rezoning efforts are because of demographics and Department of Justice, as he said. It's not really about the capacity, but this would then potentially lead to a second rezoning that would need to occur in order to make option 3 a potential option. So that's part of the reason why, Mr. Moore, why I mentioned option 4 about having Forest Glen and Kilby Shores on one campus-style site. That doesn't change our footprint for where we are looking at rezoning schools at the elementary level, the 7 schools that we've targeted.
Okay. Questions and comments, Vice Mayor Wood?
Well, having that presentation, I think that this is one of the times we got to really sit down and discuss what's best for the school board, but the city. I mean, got two different opinions, and we got to sit down on that, get that trust back, and see what we can do.
Okay, Councilman Rector?
Thank you. Talk about a problem that needs to be solved. This is a problem that needs to be solved because, as the mayor pointed out during his talk, money isn't everything, but it sure helps. And we have a comprehensive plan that identifies growth areas. And obviously we did that for a reason because that's where city resources, sewer, water, and whatnot are going. And we tried to have an organized plan to how the city grows so that we can manage it. These schools are in the middle pretty much of the growth zones. They have gotten their populations to where they are because of the development that has occurred within these growth zones. If we don't figure out a solution to this problem, the projects that come before the city run into the obstacle of the adequate public facilities. And when they fall into these schools' areas, it just simply, even though the developers offer the proffers to mitigate the additional students to the schools, it does create a continued perception that, we're just crowding people into schools for the sake of growth. But if we cannot continue growth at some level, then we're not going to increase the tax base, which is going to help bring in the money that we need to fund all these projects that we've been talking about. So it's a little bit of a self-perpetuating problem. We have trouble bringing in more development because we have no place to put the students. We can't generate the money to solve the problem because we can't bring in more development. So this is one area, and even more important than the school administration is where the city and the school board definitely need to hopefully get their heads together and work out a solution that is amenable for not the council, not the school board, but for the citizens and the students of the city of Suffolk.
Board Member Riddick?
It is my recommendation that the city manager, as well as the school superintendent, get together with whomever from their cabinet that needs to be together to, one, develop one formula for determining school capacity. Because I believe we have two different formulas that we're using. And it was just explained pretty much by Dr. Gordon when he went through and pointed out how each option using the school formula, it realistically looked versus using the formula that's used by city. When we're speaking two separate love language, we're gonna have disagreements unnecessarily. We're not gonna see common ground, and we're gonna be spinning in circles. I said this at the last joint meeting, and I'm gonna say it again now. The mayor, not the mayor, but the city manager and the superintendent and whomever from their cabinet needs to first get in the room and determine what formula we're going to use in determining school capacity. So realistically, when you plan and when we plan, we're pulling from the same source. These are some valuable options. And I'm going to say this here, and it's not an election year for me, so I don't want nobody to think that narrative. Elephant's Fork is older than Northern Shores. I am 34 years old, and Elephant's Fork had mobile units at Elephant's Fork since I was a baby, because my brother was in one of the mobile units in the year 1990. The urgency is now. We can't continue to kick around the can here. So we need to make a realistic effort. I know that at one point in time, I was in conversation with someone who was possibly willing to donate the land to build a new Elephant's Fork. He asked how many acres did we need. I think we need to explore all options, but I also believe that we need to really think about how we can get the most for our buck by repurposing these facilities, as I stated for earlier, not as a negotiation, not as a pawn, but because this is what our needs are, is capacity, that we repurpose old building to relieve pressure in the northern end, and maybe if we build a new elementary school in central Suffolk, we can repurpose one of the older schools as a primary school there to relieve pressure and thus have more room for growth, or let alone even to make it into an administrative site. I mean, but these are valuable options, but I think if we're going to make some realistic progress, we're going to have to, one, speak the same language, and that starts with our determining enough capacity. Thank you.
Okay. Board Member Byram?
Thank you. I agree with Dr. Gordon. I think we need to examine these figures, as Mr. Riddick said, also looking at the capacity. We need to examine those and make sure we're all on the same page. Elephant's Fork, to me, you know, I've been on this board for 16 years, and I've looked at Elephant's Fork and some of our schools and Kilby Shores. They were not built in the right place to begin with back in the 70s. And that needs to be adjusted. It is a safety issue. I've had concerns from my constituents who have children that go there for early start and all types of classes that have said that it's a problem in the afternoon, as Mr. Moore said, the children being picked up. That's going to become more and more a problem in those areas. So this needs to be addressed immediately. I favor two schools because I look at the figures and I believe that you shouldn't build a school that is already filled to capacity when you open that school. And that's a waste of money, because we're going to have to think about putting an extension on another school or some other facility very shortly. It's not going to work. I favor the ideas of two schools, and as soon as possible, because they need relief. Elephant's Fork, like Mr. Riddick says, has been a wonderful little school. But those mobile units all over our city should be replaced. It's a safety issue. We're in the 21st century. We look at the news every day and see what's happening. And I only fear those things coming to our city. We don't know when it will happen. That's why safety is so important. That's why Dr. Gordon has instituted so many safety concerns and issues over the last few years, and the board has agreed. So, this is a safety thing. We need to eliminate those problems. And anybody knows when you go out on Route 10 or 250 or 58, the traffic concerns there, and they grow as we speak. So this needs to be addressed immediately to schools, what we need.
Yes, just briefly, I promise. I would support 2 schools just because I'm an educator and I've been one for over 54 years now. And I realize that when the school is too large, we don't meet the purpose, and it depends on the population and so many other things. One thing that Dr. Gordon did not mention when he talked about class sizes. Special education has been an issue for me. I started in 1971, and the class size may begin at 4, which means that if it is, depending on the children's disabilities, they need the space as well. So we're not looking at a situation where you can just divide them up into groups of 25 and go on with that. And as we're looking at little children who come into our schools, our preschool classrooms, you're looking at whole new populations and whole new resource needs and all sorts of things. So when we're looking at classrooms, as one who started with all of her materials on a cart, moving around from place to place as a special education teacher, they need to be built in. And I know that Heather can, Board Member Howell, Vice Chair Howell, can share that because she began as well like that. We understand that there are some needs that need to be met inside the building. So I would really strongly support the 2-school solution. The other thing I'd like to say is when we talk about numbers and the numbers for seats, my population, one of the things that I advocated before, and I would just say this for Northern Shores, that was one of the things that I advocated for in the beginning of my tenure in 2014, pushing it up the CIP, because we started with a population largely military, and because of the shifts in the joint services program, people moved in, they moved out. At one time, Northern Shores was over 900 students, just because of the moves with the military in and out. And it went up, it went down, it went up, it went down. But the bottom line is, when we open a school and when we don't have the capacity, as we did, and I remember our argument over how large Colonel Fred Cherry should be when we opened that. That was another thing that I pushed for. When we opened Fred Cherry, we were having a discussion about 600 students. We got it up to 800 students, and when we opened, we had 760 seats filled. So we had 40 seats left when we opened that school the first day. So when we look at populations and when we look at studies, there are so many things that interfere, so many confounding variables that change the results of a study. And so as we look at these 2 schools, if we're looking at something that might last or might need to last over 50 years, I want us to consider the fact that we have no idea of what Suffolk is going to look like and where it's going to be where it is 50 years from now. So I just want us to keep that in mind. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Butler Barlow.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to say thank you for the fact that we have 3 options, and also thank you for the open minds that will come up with a 4th and a 5th and a 6th and whatever option is going to work the best for the citizens and the students. Dr. Gordon, you mentioned that 1,500 student elementary school, and that does sound kind of unprecedented. I think smaller schools serve our kids better, but I'm not an educator. But I just look forward to the idea that we're going to work through and find out new solutions that grow out of these 3, and that we find something that's going to be good and that's going to be timely, because again, those 2 schools in particular are in bad shape. So thank you.
Member Slingloff.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Elephants Fork is one of the schools in my borough, so I'm definitely concerned with it, and do see the need for Elephants Fork. But the thing that keeps going through my head right now is the fact, the saying that says you measure twice and cut once. And I first want to applaud Mr. Littlefield and everybody who is, has been a part of the DOJ response because I think about all the elements and the moving parts in this here when we're looking at trying to satisfy the DOJ and then trying to satisfy capacity, and now we're talking about new schools and whether we consolidate them or whether we don't, and thinking about land areas. There's a lot of moving parts to be considered, and I think it's a discussion that needs to urgently be had, but we definitely need to think through all of these things. One of the things that I have a question with, and I don't know if Dr. Gordon or if Mr. Moore, if you have an answer to this, but I'm curious as to whether there are any land areas that we have in mind for any of the potential locations, whether it be two single schools or whether it be a double school or whatever the options. I'm curious where we're looking, because I know that that even plays into what I heard earlier, the zoning for the Department of Justice as well.
It's kind of a two-sided.
Yeah.
It's kind of a two-sided coin.
We
talk
have-
about it too much, kind of messes up your negotiating standpoint.
We have,
Being able to negotiate.
Sure.
Yeah.
we have, I had shown Dr. Gordon a centralized site. I'll
Okay.
probably leave it right
Okay,
there.
that's fine. Are you thinking, may I ask if it's one that you're considering for option? Were you considering for the option 2, or you could considering for one of the other options?
It could be option 1 or option 2 or option 3.
Okay. All right, I won't ask anymore. Thank you.
Well, I didn't mean to be,
have options.
no, it works for,
Okay.
Or option 4 if we come up with it.
All right.
Councilman Johnson?
I'm just going to give a new perspective here, because I truly do not believe in 800 student schools for elementary schools. And I know it doesn't fit in any of our plans because the money says this is the way we have to go now, but I would prefer to see our schools at 600. We look after our kids and we get a economy of scale and go to the builder and say we want 3 schools. And we want to put, and maybe it's not even fundable, maybe we can't do it, but 1,500, I'm sorry, I can never see it. I mean, I don't think it's fair to our teachers, it's not fair to our system, and Justice Department too, they tick me off as well, because I don't want transporting these students all the way to Southwestern. It makes no sense. It's not fair to the families, it's not fair to the schools, and it doesn't accomplish anything. So if we build schools, small schools, scattered through the city, where we don't have to do all this heavy-duty busing, to me, it just makes better sense. Now, the money's not there, fine, the money's not there, but we'll find the money when we get ready to do this. But that's my perspective. I can't sign on to any of this because I don't think it's the right answer. I do think campuses are the right answer, though, and I've talked to John about that, because let's not put schools on major highways. Kilby Shores is a huge mistake. All you have to do is be there when they unload and be there when they load, and there's just too many kids. Same thing with Elephant's Fork, too many kids. But we moved these schools to a place where the destination is the school rather than off the road. I just think we need to look ahead a little bit better. And I know this is not what we're about, but I truly worry about big elementary schools. Thank you. I'm done.
Board Member Brittingham?
Thank you. I'm going to echo my councilman's sentiment. I am for smaller schools. I think that, when you have neighborhood schools, smaller in capacity, 600 or less, it's better for the student learning environment. But looking at what we have in front of us, the capacity issues, this is something that really should have been put into place, a decade ago. If you look at the population back in 2010, we were at about 84,000, and now we're at 2022, we were at 89,000 and growing. That's a 16% growth rate. I don't think that's going to slow down anytime soon. I think Suffolk is the place to come and live. We have marketed ourselves well. Unfortunately, we have not prepared for the schools and the need that we have. Looking at the pipeline report from February of this year, we've approved 6,819 homes. And that's a potential of 17,000 families. And how many of those are students that will be enrolling in school system here? That's where I'm just wondering, how are we going to meet these capacity issues if we are not regulating the growth better? But just dealing with what we have in front of us, we've got to take care of the issue for Elephant's Fork and Kilby Shores. But we also have Kings Fork Middle School. We have Kings Fork High School too. I mean, all of our schools in some capacity or other, have areas that are over capacity. And how are we going to meet those needs? So I would like to, like Councilman Johnson said, I would like to see something potentially with a campus-type style situation. Forest Glen would be a great place for us to put Kilby Shores at. But where else in the city can we look at where we could maybe do something similar with, let's say, Elephant's Fork? I mean, how can we, move this so that we don't have to try and build a 1,500 elementary school capacity? That just does not seem realistic or in the best interest of educating our students. So that's where I'm at. Thank you.
Councilmember Bennett?
Thank you, Mayor. I would just like to say that thank you, Dr. Gordon, for your presentation and educating me on how much capacity that you need for these students by the ratio number. I didn't realize you had to have that many different classes for different kindergarten and up. I think it's good to get that out to me where I understand better. You're talking about the numbers and the reason those numbers are what they are by you explaining that to me. Okay, I'll put that off, okay. But anyway, I think that gives me a great idea of what you're looking at. And I agree with Councilman Johnson and Ms. Brittingham. I think the smaller schools is a better way of educating our kids. So I would strongly support 2 schools. I know it's going to cost more, but I think what we are looking at is what we're going to get in return for what we are doing for our kids and the future of our city. And I know we are talking about the cost of 2 schools, but to look at what we are gaining by having the capability of educating our kids the right way and in the direction that they should be taught. So that's one of the reasons that I really support the 2 schools. I don't think the schools I know I've heard about Northern Shores going up to 1,000, but and I don't know how that's working out. But
It's not.
I guess that's where some of the numbers are coming from, is because you have 1,000 up or going to 1,000 at Northern Shores. So looking at maybe that's what they want to do.
There isn't, I mentioned, and I'm sorry, I'm probably out of order, but since I think you're referring to me, that's why I brought up special education classes, smaller numbers than 25 per classroom, 18 per classroom. If you look at the numbers, if you were just doing 25, 25, and 25. But it's been up to over 900. It's been up to over 900 over the years. And so it's been up to over 900 because of all the building that's been going on in the area. And we're backed up to Newport News and the water. So it's not like we could just cut up and go somewhere else.
Okay. Well, thank you. That was my comment, so, Mayor.
Councilman Fawcett?
Thank you, Mayor. Want to echo, first off, thank you all, Dr. Gordon, City Manager, and also Mr. Littlefield, I guess, put some of this. I'll give him a little shout out for putting this together. You kind of stole it from, I get it. But yeah, okay. We borrowed it, okay. But anyway, I appreciate, the information, and I echo pretty much what people are saying around the table here. My councilman, Mr. Rector, of course, and, this is a good place to start right here. And there is no question that we've got some aging schools that are over capacity. And it's no doubt people want to continue to come to Suffolk, and we're going to continue to grow. We don't want to just grow residentially, but we need to grow business-wise to be able to help support the mechanism of the revenue stream that's going to take to get us there, because the rooftops alone is not going to always cut it. But when you have, like an Amazon coming in paying a pretty good tax revenue stream, it helps a lot. We have a debt ceiling that we have to stay up against. You take and look at just doing 2 schools and 110 million, that's today. if you take and look back, and Dr. Buck, I remember when Mr. Dobransky and Mr. Midnick came to me, when we were talking about the Florence Bowser School, and we talked about Fred Cherry. And I argued with them, because it was 600. And I said, that's not going to cut it. They said, well, we don't think we can get it to 800. So we can get it to 800, but it's still not enough. So why can't you get it to 1,000? They said, because we can't build it there for 1,000. The school site won't handle it. I find it very hard to believe. So they settled on an 800 seat. I remember that conversation very well with them. I remember the conversation in front of this council arguing about the size of schools. You can go back and look at it. It's on tape. I'm all for building new schools if and way we get it. I would love a multi-campus school. I believe they did it up there in Hickory, if you look. They built their schools on a campus. And a campus school does a lot of things. It gives you a lot of controls. Buses go to one location. You know, you don't have them going to 2 and 3 and 4 schools. Is it realistic? Can it happen? I guess anything can happen if you put your mind to it and think about it. I'm not so sure I can go with 600. I think 600 because you're not, there again, you put yourself in a box again, not to allow for growth. Suffolk's going to grow for the next few years, regardless of what anybody thinks, it's going to grow. So I would not put myself in a box at 600 seats because you're going to be right back to where you're at today, overcrowdedness. And you're not going to be able to build 3, 4, 5 schools. Right now, you couldn't build 2 right now if you tried today because the revenue is not there to do it. So this has got to be well thought out, and this is something the manager and the superintendent need to get their heads around to see what they can come up with. And if and when we get a good, solid look at what we can do, because I'm blown away by what it cost us to do JFK. If we hadn't got the money that we had in CIP, plus the money we got from the state and the money we took from the old human resource building, we would be paddling uphill real bad to try to get that school built. That is 74 to 75 million, and we're not talking about cost overruns. We hadn't even talked about that could happen. So, and, you know, that's a big lift. That's a big lift considering we built 2 schools, Red Cherry and Florence Bowser, for 60. And that's just been a few years. So, you know, I'm all favor. I support. Look at education's the number one, you know, backbone of this country. There's no question about it. In my opinion, yes, I'll have to agree. Suffolk has been behind in school buildings. This should have been dealt with years ago. The revenue wasn't there. You remember back early in the early days, Suffolk was struggling just to do certain things to make city operations work. So there was a lot of pre-issues that probably held that from happening. Could have been more proactive. I could say anything but be more proactive for sure. But, you know, as long as I'm sitting on this board, and I'm going to make one comment that I didn't like that was being said, I don't do things because it's an election year. I don't do things because it's an election year, and I find that to be a very ill statement to be made. I'm sitting here on this council every day to try to do the best I can for the citizens of this city. It doesn't matter what borough you're in or where you come from. Some people will disagree with the way I've done, maybe voted on certain things, but it's not. We're sitting around this table trying to figure out how to get things done, and it's not about an election year. So keep that and park that somewhere else because that's not going to flow with me. I'm not here for that. So we'll just keep grinding it out, and we're going to keep working together as much as possible to get to where we want to go, to get the things we want to do, but we got to do it in a financial, responsible way that we can afford to do it and not bust the bond rating and all those things we got to contend with. So if we can come up with it. I'll be the first one to throw a vote on it and say go. It's not a problem for me. But it's just how are we going to get there and where's the revenue stream going to be? So thank you very much, and I appreciate each and every one of you that are here today. It's been a great afternoon to be with you.
Vice Chair Howe.
I will be blessedly brief because I have to slip away to another meeting at 6 o'clock, so I apologize to all of my colleagues for dipping out early. I was hoping not to have to do that. Thank you, Mr. Moore, for coming up with all these options, and thank you, Dr. Gordon, for the perspective. I'm in agreement, I think, with most of my colleagues and council members. I don't support a large school to solve this problem from a special ed perspective, obviously, and for our administrators to take on that weight. So I'm happy to be part of any discussion and brainstorm with you and be a team player here, but this needs to be figured out. Y'all have a good evening.
Okay, I'm going to be really brief. Everybody has some good perspectives. Go ahead.
No, I don't have pretty much anything else to add. I agree with many of you, Dr. Gordon and Mr. Moore. I trust that there will be conversation and we can get this done quickly. And with the schools that we're talking about, the traffic, there's no doubt it's in a bad spot. And something needs to be done because we don't want to have any type of accidents, fatalities, or anything like that. And we need to move on it quickly. And I'm sure as big as the city of Suffolk is, we can find a great place to put a new school, whether we use whatever choice that we come up with on the slides. But I trust it will happen. Thank you.
I'll be really brief. There's been a lot of, as I started to say, there's been a lot of very good comments around the table, different perspectives. What I would like to see, if it's at all possible, is if what it would take to have another study, not to the extent of this one, but basically an update of this one, to Board Member Riddick's point. We get numbers that are kind of all over the place. We get UDO numbers, we get school numbers, and we got cooperative strategy numbers, and they do bounce around. So the whole idea behind this study is to be able to make data-driven decisions. Just do it by the numbers, make data-driven decisions. And we all have our personal preferences as far as what we'd like to see and what we feel like is the best alternative. But the reality of it is, once again, if we're going to accomplish as much as we can, as quick as we can with the money that we're going to have available, we need to know what the options are. There's no question what the need is. I think everybody can agree on the need. So we don't have to talk about that anymore. It's just a matter of how we're going to be able to accommodate that. This seems to be the perfect time to do it, since you've got to do a rezoning to satisfy DOJ, and I believe Board Member Riddick brought this up at the meeting. If you're going to, you already have to do a rezoning based on DOJ, so why not look at all of it? It gives you the perfect time to look at it because you already got to address all the demographics. So you've done one part of it, now look at capacity and see what they might look like. Now, I'm not saying do this or do that, but let's not lose the opportunity that presents itself to look at it again, to relook at the student generation, to relook at where it's going to go, to take into consideration the new comprehensive plan, to look at the DOJ requirement, and to look at capacity as far as rezoning is concerned, because you could do it all at one time. I'm not saying go one school, two schools, or whatever, but maybe one school and another school here, and doing a little bit of rezoning here, maybe it's an option. I don't know. That's what this book was. This book was options. And everybody was very excited. I went back and actually looked at the meeting in 2021, and the excitement was off the chain that we were able to get some data to help us make the decisions, and then it all went south. Then we got into personal preferences and kind of squashed the data. But anyhow, so that would be, but that's what I would like to do if the board is amenable to doing it, and if it's feasible. I mean, I don't know if we got the money to pay for another study, because we paid for the last one, but I'd be curious to see what it would cost to put that together and how quickly we could do that, because I know, I'm not sure, what is the time frame with DOG? Dr. Gordon, do you know, to have that plan in place? Is that to be by next school year?
No, we want to use next school year as the planning year for any adjustments that have to be made with the board, hopefully voting on it in May or June's meeting, and it will go into effect 2025, 2026.
So, I mean, we feasibly have time to look at it. And what I would like to see is just a presentation, have a third-party presentation, go over it, see what our options are, and go from there. So, with that being said, it's been suggested we take a short 10-minute break, and that'll put us back at, let me see, how's my math here, about 5:50, and we'll reconvene then. Knock out these last two.
Thank you for your comments.
No, they just wanted to make sure that we were going to keep it. If the school there to the bag, we're going to.
Somebody gonna bring sandwiches in a few. See, at city council meeting, we have supper, so I kinda need a whole sandwich about now. No, I think this was pretty stuff.
And what else is behind that roadway?
People are concerned.
I'm getting ready to get killed up there. You might want to try to keep it safe there. Shoulders Hill, 17.
What the bottom?
They spent $36 million to dump that roadway structure. And it's not going to be, there's going to be hiccups. There's going to be rains.
Pound the gavel. Pound the gavel.
Let's do it.
Thank you.
Our next item is a report on residential development.
Yes, Kevin Wine, Director of Planning, Community Development, will give the presentation. Kevin?
Thank you, Mr. Manager, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the school board and council. It's a pretty good segue from your last conversation about where to put schools. And going back to your previous meeting, joint session in December, we were asked to take a look at where development is happening in the city relative to the school districts. So that's the information I'd like to share with you all this evening. We do maintain a database, a pipeline report to make informed land use decisions as it relates to rezonings in the city and/or conditional use permits that lead to additional density that would not otherwise be realized on property. And we maintain that database with really two sets of data. What we call committed development. Committed development means that at some point they have received plan approval, engineering plan approval, site plan approval. At that point, we are all but certain that they are going to happen and come to fruition. And then we have our non-committed development. Those would be your more recent rezonings or other land use decisions that have not yet gotten to the engineering phase, but they are in the pipeline nonetheless. So what I will go over with you this evening are a few snapshots of where this development, where this pipeline development is in the city relative to the schools. The first maps you'll see here differentiate between what is committed versus non-committed. And you can see that in the dots here. Committed development is expressed in all green, and then your non-committed is shown in red. So here we have the northern growth area. That outline you see around this piece of land is our northern growth area. You can see a lot of development has been concentrated along Bridge Road and in the Harbor View area, as well as some activity down in Driver as well. Moving along, this is our central growth area, and probably about 5-ish years ago, we saw a real trend. A lot of our development requests used to be in the northern growth area. They kind of gravitated to the central growth area of the city. And in our central growth area, you can see here north of the Route 58 bypass, particularly some activity in Hill Point and along the Route 10 corridor. Additionally, when our comprehensive plan was updated in 2015, that would be April 2015, there was a section of Turlington Road that came into the growth corridor at that point, and there's been a lot of development activity up and down Turlington Road over the last several years. So this is that, kind of the same map, utilizing a different set of data. Basically, how many units remain undeveloped within these areas. The orange areas are the ones that are completely undeveloped at this point. You have the beige ones that expresses that it's under construction, and then you have the green ones. There's no remaining development. So this is that same data expressed on the first map for the northern growth area. Most of it's under construction. There's very few areas of the city that are very few areas in this growth area that have 100% remaining. And there are a few pockets. We have one of the more larger developments in the city is right off of Bob White Lane. It's called River Club. That's 377 units. That's actively under construction now. All right, so this is that same information for your central growth area. A lot of our outstanding development here remains in Hill Point. There's been some re-leveraging of units that were previously approved councils ago, about 20 years ago, actually, in Hill Point that developers are leveraging now. And once again, you have that activity up and down Turlington Road. So, what does this mean for the districts, the school districts? This is an outline of our high school districts relative to where development is occurring. The most stressed remains Nansen River High School. However, with the activity that we've seen along the Route 10 corridor, that has put Kings Fork High School into an area where it had a tremendous amount of capacity at one time. However, that's slowly being eaten up by development opportunities. Lakeland remains quite under leveraged from a capacity perspective. Moving along, same information overlaid with our middle schools. You can see here in the north area you have Colonel Fred Cherry and John Yates. Both of those are, from a pipeline perspective, are in relatively decent shape. However, Forest Glen remains the most stressed middle school from a capacity perspective with utilizing pipeline data. And looking at the same information with elementary schools, Elephant's Fork remains, I believe, the most stressed as it relates to pipeline data at this point, as does Kilby Shores. So that being said, that concludes my presentation. I can stand by.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wine. Before we get started, I'm somewhat disappointed in the information we got. I mean, I appreciate it, for sure, but I know I received some information the other day that was much more specific as to pipeline development. Matter of fact, I showed it to the manager. It had each individual neighborhood, each individual approval, whether it was active, whether it was inactive, and to the percent that it was built out. And along with it, it also reflected the student generation that was going to result from the build out when the time comes, and then looked at the capacity also. So, I mean, I would just say if we can get our hands on that and send it to everyone that's gathered around here, to the city council and everyone on school board, I think it would be, in addition to what you provided, I think it would be very informative, and maybe from the school system standpoint in particular, I think talking to the chairman, that's kind of what you were looking for, is specifically in what neighborhoods are not built out and what the student generation would be when they are built out within a specific time frames to help with your planning and Dr. Gordon's planning. So if we could get that to everyone, Mr. Manager, I think you know what it is, because I was impressed with the information. Maybe get it to everybody, give a little bit more perception as to what's going on. So with that, we'll start with you last time. We're going down this. Councilman Fawcett, any comments?
I've got nothing at this point.
Okay, Councilman Bennett?
I'm good, no.
All right. Dr. Brittingham?
So one of the questions that is continuing to nag me in all this process is, if the Planning Commission is the one that approves all this growth, why don't we have them involved in this conversation with us? Like, what we know what they're approving, and knowing what that is and what's coming down, the pipeline would be helpful in real time for us to look at this, particularly when we're dealing with capacity issues of like 150%, 118%. You know, if we knew, if we had them here to kind of weigh in on this conversation, it would be helpful, because then we would have an idea. Like, I just know that recently in February, the pipeline report showed that 6,819 new homes were approved, and that's a potential of 17, almost 18,000 people, 17, almost 18% increase. That's big. Like, that's something that we would need to see that's coming down the pipeline, because I know the way the Planning Commission works, it doesn't necessarily mean that when they approve it, you'll build on it. But knowing that, let's say somebody came in and has bought some land or been approved to buy some land and will be developing that in the next 8 to 10 years, that would be helpful, I think, for the school, for planning purposes. So,
Just to answer your question, I mean, the Planning Commission is just a recommendation. They actually don't approve anything.
Right.
So what you would have to look at is the comp plan that's the big part of the funnel that shows where the growth areas are. Then you can look within those growth areas and see how they're currently zoned. So then you get an idea of what can be built by right based on the zoning. So the only time the Planning Commission would get involved, I mean, they help put the comp plan together, but the Planning Commission gets involved when there's either a conditional use permit or a rezoning to allow for additional building. So, and then they'll look at, the staff will look at it, they'll analyze it, they'll make a recommendation, goes to Planning Commission, they look at the data, they're either going to recommend approval or denial of a CUP or a rezoning, and then it comes to council, we do it. So it's really, from the Planning Commission's standpoint, even if it's a larger project, I mean, it's 90 days from the time it starts here and then ends up with us. So I'm not sure they would really, you know, it's the Planning Commission,
Okay.
but that's the big picture. Mr. Manager, you might want to add something there.
Well, I just want to make another point here is real quickly, as we look back 12 years, we've had over, I think it's over 6,800, maybe 6,600 homes built. But the school-age population in the schools hasn't changed dramatically based on that 6,600. So I'd be careful going 1 + 1 = 2 on some of this, because it doesn't, if you look back 12 years from where your population was in the school district then to now, it hasn't changed that dramatically on the 6,600 homes that were built. So it's, you know, I see where you were going with that, but I would just, you know, you're going to see some growth, but I'd be careful on the student generation number there.
It hasn't been proportionate by a long shot.
Okay.
To his point, if you look back 12 years, virtually have the same number of kids in school now than
Right.
12 years ago. I'll ask that question when I go out to, you know, I'll say, well, how many more kids do you think we've had since we had all this growth? And it's like, oh my goodness, with all this growth, you probably got another 5,000 kids. No, we got 0. I mean, it's literally the same thing. So it has to be put in relevance. But for planning purposes, you still need to know, because you know now about what might come out of it, and it also,
right.
you know, what grades
And that's what I was considering, is that
Yeah.
we might have some projected numbers that will help us to better plan for what can we expect.
And
you
like you
know?
said, once you get that report, you got the report. I mean, that, to me, it really puts it on the money, because this is what's active. If there was 100 homes approved here, 50 of them have been built, there's 50 of them coming, and when they get built up, it's going to generate 6 more elementary school kids, 3 more high school kids, because that's going to be determined by the type of housing it is.
Right.
You know, through using the student generation formulas that we were just talking about. But right now, like I said, there's basically 3 sets of numbers out there. The UDO, the schools, and cooperative strategies are, you know.
So
out there.
when we have builders come in and we give them the rights to property to develop it, how much money is set aside in the proffers, and at what point does the proffer kick in to help offset some of the growth? How does that happen? How does that work?
Well,
Sorry.
Yeah, you want to go and answer it? Yeah, I could make something up.
That's an excellent question. In order for us to be able to accept a proffer towards something like a school, that we have to have a capital project, meaning that there has to be a capital project in our CIP, adopted CIP. So based upon that, we look at the levels of service established within the UDO, within our adequate public facilities section. And we identify how many students are short, how much capacity they need to advance towards. At that point, we make them, I'm sorry, make is not the right word. Proffers are voluntary. In order to satisfy our adequate public facilities requirements within the Unified Development Ordinance, they're essentially paying for each student that they would be generating in excess of what's available. And that is proportionate on how much that school would cost at full capacity. So an 800-student elementary school, I believe based on our current numbers, it would be about $45,000 per student that they would proffer. And then that increases about $60,000 for the middle school, and it gets to, for a new high school student, about $75,000.
And the proffers, just so you know, I mean, the proffers are voluntary. You know, it's what they can offer if there's not adequate capacity now, they can offer it. What is difficult sometimes, at least when I look at it, is even though they offer the proffer and you get a couple $1 million and it sits in the bank for a school that's not going to be built in 10 years, what happens in the meantime? Because you're creating that extra capacity on a school that's already overcrowded, but it's not going to be built for 10 years. So, and in the big scheme of things, I mean, a lot of cities don't even accept proffers, I don't think. But we do, and it's not a bad thing, but I don't think it should be the overwhelming thing sometimes.
So it's only used for schools that are in the future to be built. It can't be used for additions to schools. It can't be used.
Right, like Mr. Wine said, there has to be a school in the project.
Okay.
If the school costs $100,000 and it's it comes out to $1,000 a pupil, and their project generates 5 more kids, costs them $5,000. That's pretty much it in a nutshell, kind of.
But if, Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, but back to your question, can it be used on expansions, not new schools? It can be used on expansions, correct, Kevin?
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, if it's in the CIP now.
If it's in the CIP, it's got to be in the CIP.
It's going to be a CIP project.
It's like a Nance River High School shows an expansion in the CIP, we could use proffers.
For that, okay.
Okay, Councilman Johnson?
I'm okay. Thanks.
Pass.
Well, the only thing that is standing out to me again is just thinking about the growth, particularly in my borough and the Hill Point area, affecting Kings Fork Middle and High School, and also, I know Elephants Fork's already been on the table, and Hill Point. Again, it just makes me go back to the rezoning and consideration of, looking at the capacities again and make sure, and that was part of my, measure twice, cut once. Look at it and really determine, are we doing the best for the rezoning? Forward thinking, so that we're not back in a place again in a few years when we see the fruition of all this growth and what it's produced, and we're trying to hindsight again, and now we've got the emergencies that we're facing today with trying to get it done yesterday. That's the only thing I've thought.
Councilmember Butler Barlow?
So I just have a question. I can't see anybody, Kevin. Sorry, Kevin. So we have these committed and non-committed developments, but we don't consider the non-committed in the student generation at all?
For the purpose of calculating the kind of pipeline capacity, that is correct. The UDO requires that we account for committed development only when it comes to establishing what the level of service is for a school.
So, and you say we can't count that unless there's a submitted plan to the.
Unless there's an approved plan.
An approved plan, okay. All right. I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you. I don't have anything else, thanks.
Board Member Byron?
I just want to thank Mayor Duman for asking for additional information, because my eyes are old. I couldn't read any of this information here. And you probably having the same problem. And, I'd like to see more information, because I think that will tell us more of what we need to know. Thank you for asking. That's all I say.
Board Member Riddick?
I'm gonna just echo what School Board Member Byram said. It's difficult to read the maps, so it's really kind of hard to formulate any fruitful questions from something I can't read. I do look forward to getting the email in great detail, but it is also my request, well, I do have a question. In the comprehensive plan, and then I may have a follow-up question after that, in the formulating of the comprehensive plan, what role did Suffolk Public Schools have in the creation of that plan?
Kevin, if you...
As it relates to the current comprehensive plan that we have adopted?
I want to make sure I'm correct, because I haven't been following it lately, but the one that we was discussing last year, that at that time, it had not been approved. I don't know if you adopted it or not now. So it's still out in the works?
Yes.
So to what extent have Suffolk Public Schools had in the development or the developing of that plan that's still out in the works?
Although we've had a tremendous amount of public outreach opportunities, but as it relates specifically to Suffolk Public Schools, they are represented on our steering committee for the comprehensive plan. Specifically, Dr. Branch, I believe, is on the steering committee.
Dr. Gordon, I will ask that you speak and provide clarity to that, because I want to make sure that we are not coming at the end when the plan has already been prepared and this is where we want to see growth, and now we're trying to catch up. What role, because I have not received, and I was chair last year, and I can't recall if the board received any information regarding the comprehensive plans and our role from the comprehensive plans, and what was the recommendations. So
to answer the first part of your question, Dr. Branch served as the school division's designee to make sure that in the development of the comprehensive plan, the city was aware of the school division's needs. There really hasn't been any feedback or any role other than that the school system has been a part of, except for receiving one email asking for a description of the demographic breakdown, capacity breakdown, total enrollment of our schools that I did. So we haven't seen any additional drafts besides Dr. Branch's attendance at the meetings, and I don't know how many meetings there have been in the last 6 to 12 months.
I'm going to conclude with this. It is my desire, since that plan has not been finalized, that maybe Dr. Gordon and Dr. Branch go back to the plan and come back to the board, because trying to choose my words wisely here. I don't want to be misconstrued. I understand it's a lot of thought and effort that goes into that comprehensive plan, and that's our growth plan of how we want to grow over the coming years. Hill Point has been planned out for years, way before it had come to fruition. So I want to make sure that whatever we are planning to do and take away from this meeting here, that Suffolk Public Schools have a viable stake in that formulating of that plan. And I'm going to just stop there and we'll follow up later.
Well, just comment, I would say to your question, when it comes to the comp plan is the big picture as to what we're looking at, where the growth is, but where the school system is going to come in is as far as adequate public facilities is always going to be a concern. So certain projects or certain rezonings or CUPs would be contingent on school capacity as well. So it would be taken into consideration, but I mean, I understand your concern, especially if there was something specific within the plan that you would think that would need to be addressed. If that makes any sense. Councilman Rector?
I'm good, thank you.
Dr. Brooks-Bug?
Yes, I just had, of course, I guess everybody else, I'm glad that as I got comments from everybody else, I leaned over and asked Mr. Riddick, I said, your eyes are younger than mine, maybe you saw something I didn't see on here, because I even used my phone to try to magnify it, and I couldn't read anything on here. But I will say this, one of the concerns that I had when you mentioned a study, having us do a study, the problem with the study we had before is that the study results were inconsistent with what actually happened. And we continue to look back at the study, but the reality was that the study indicated that the growth was going to be, for instance, with high school, the growth was going to be at Nansemond River when the growth was actually at Kings Fork. And so I don't know that spending another $500,000 on the study before we get started and not looking at the data that we already have in place, because we've already looked at this, at least at the school board level, looked at the information that we have in order to make decisions about what we want to do to move forward. So I think without a study, we could move forward on some of the things that we know need to be in place. We can go ahead with those things without waiting for study or even committing more resources to a study. I think we could commit those resources to moving forward. And I just want to say that. The other thing is, because this area is so transient, people are moving from city to city, because I thought about what you said, and you're absolutely right about the numbers, because we're graduating about 1,000 children every year. So our growth is our numbers are going to be fluid all the time, because we're graduating 1,000 students every time. So we lose 1,000 people every year that we come in, so the population isn't growing, it's moving through. So a few numbers will come in at a time. But I looked at, just to make sure before I made the statement earlier about Virginia Beach, when I did my dissertation in 2000 rather, the population in Virginia Beach was 68,000 students. They're at 70,000 students now, 24 years later. So everybody's pretty much doing the same. And what I wanted to say is people are moving in our area because our area has so many industries and of course, to a large part, military-based. We have a lot of people who are moving in and out all the time. So that's going to be our situation. It's really hard to put your finger on whoever's there. The formulas for that form the basis for the studies. I remember asking this question before we did the study, or when we did the study, and people were talking about growth and not having growth, and they were saying that, where 3 or 4 bedroom houses are and whatever, and that there weren't going to be enough students generated. And I said, and I do it now because I'm usually in the midst of those buses in the Hampton Roads Parkway area where the new houses are built. Now, our buses stop there and pick up people aged 3 to 18. I don't know if they're supposed to be living there, but they sure do live there because we have buses going there. So in those places where the apartments were supposed to be expensive and kids weren't supposed to be in there, they do live there. And so it's really hard to put our finger on with a study that has so many confounding variables to find out who's going to actually move into what. And we do have a lot of kids who are living in those areas where we really didn't build or approve units for those areas. And I think that's why it's so hard to keep an eye on what some of the others were asking about, where these children are and where we need to build schools and what we ought to do. It really is. So that's my 2 cents worth, but thank you. I appreciate this information. Look forward to getting some more specific information because I, like you, Mr. Mayor, couldn't see anything on here either.
It's Mayor Ward.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for putting that on the agenda, and I'm just looking forward to the presentation that you've asked that we get that's in more detail. Okay, that's it.
All right, let's move to our last discussion item, major transportation projects. Mr. Manager?
I'm hoping this is more information than discussion, but we're going to, Darrell Lewis, our Assistant Director of Public Works, is going to go over some key construction projects, road construction projects that are ongoing or coming in the near future, so that the school board can be aware of the impacts to your transportation. Darrell?
I say greetings to you, Mayor, members of council, city staff, chairman, board members, and superintendent. I am here to give an update on roadway updates. Okay, so let's start with Holland Road, the 3.1 mile widening project that I'm sure we're all aware of. But I can say that the finish line is quickly coming into view. In fact, within the next couple months, we will do our final traffic switch on this project, which will allow us to complete the work in the median. And as you can see there, anticipated completion time is December of this year. Next project that I have is Shoulders Hill Road and Ridge Road, the improvements there. This project provides additional capacity at the intersection. And you may or may not know, this project was actually delayed about 14 months due to utilities. But I'm happy to report that as of April 1st, we've given the notice to proceed for this project. And with that, you'll see that anticipated construction completion would be winter of 2025. This project terminates at Laycock Road along Shoulders Hill Road. And with that, that brings us to the next project, the Shoulders Hill widening project, which will pick up right there at Laycock and extend down to Hughesville Road. And this is also a widening project. It'll have pedestrian accommodations also associated with it. This next project I'm excited about, the Nasman Parkway Willow overpass. I know that if you've ever been caught by a train, a real long train, and during peak hours where the backup is almost to the high school, you'll definitely appreciate this project. So this is basically a flyover bridge so that regardless if a train is coming, we'll never be impacted. So we're building a flyover, and it does also have accommodations for pedestrians. And I don't know if you've been out there and seen the progress, but it's coming along very well, looking real good, and have a anticipated completion date of fall of next year. This next project, Nasman Parkway Bennett's Pasture Road improvements, essentially provides improvements right there near Nasman River High School. The first thing it does is the signal that's at the current entrance, which was supposed to be a temporary signal, that will be removed and will be placed permanently at the intersection of Nasman Parkway and Sleepy Hole Road. The existing entrance that's on Nasman Parkway will be closed and be relocated on Sleepy Hole Road. And then finally, we will add some additional parking on the campus of Nasman River High School with this project. Currently, we're wrapping up utility relocations for this project. Anticipate starting construction this summer, and the planned completion is next winter. Pitch Kettle Road. This is a realignment project to improve horizontal and sight distance geometry. Also with this project, there'll be some pedestrian accommodations. We noticed that there was a need for that, and just a continuation from Prentice. Also, with this project, we're currently wrapping up utilities and anticipate starting construction fall of this year with an anticipated construction completion time of about 2 years, fall of 2026. Next project on the list is the Pewsville drainage, the second phase of that. Essentially, this provides drainage improvements for the Pewsville community by providing a closed stormwater system under John Street and then providing a stormwater retention pond in between. With this one, we're very close to advertising this project. We're having to wrap up a couple of purchases for some wetland credits, and shortly thereafter, we're anticipating around May, we should start construction there and then be finished by summer of 2025. Godwin Boulevard improvements. With the growth that we're all aware of, this is also a widening project that extends from the intersection of Kings Fork Road all the way to the Suffolk bypass. We will be providing a multi-use path on the east side and a sidewalk on the 5-foot sidewalk on the west side. There are about 7 signals along the corridor that will be modified. Right now, we recently started this in January, so we're out there surveying. Surveying should be completed in a couple months. As you can see, anticipated construction is to start in fall of 2026 and approximately 2-year construction period for fall 2028 completion. Route 1032, the Virgin Diamond Interchange. So this project is what we call an innovative, has an innovative design where it will convert the existing Cloverleaf interchange to the Virgin Diamond interchange, which we call the DDI. And basically how that works is it allows traffic to switch sides. And the benefit of that is that it creates a safer condition. First point is, since the vehicles have switched sides, all of the left turns become free flow movements, so there's no crossing conflicts, so it reduces conflict points. Also, with DDIs, you can expect that the delay and capacity of the intersection, the delay will go down, capacity will increase, because you can basically put a signal on either end, run shorter cycles, and move more traffic through the intersection. This project will be done in conjunction with the Godwin Boulevard widening project, so they'll be built together, and it has the same schedule. Also out there surveying this project. Route 17 Bridge Road widening. So this project will pick up where the Bridge Road Shoulders Hill project terminates at Windward Lane, and then continue the widening along Route 17 to Harborview area. Again, we'll provide an additional lane in each direction and accommodations for pedestrians, and any modifications that are necessary for the signals. Route 460 widening. Again, this is a widening project that extends from Lake Prince Drive all the way to the interchange of Route 460 and 58. There are signals along the corridor that would be modified. Again, we will provide pedestrian accommodations on both sides of the roadway. And also, in conjunction with this project, the interchange there is proposed to also construct a DDI, divergent diamond interchange there. This next set of projects, the Suffolk Seaboard Coastline Trail projects, I just wanted to show this. This trail system is part of a multi-jurisdictional trail system, 41 miles long, and it will, once built, you will be able to walk, run, ride your bikes from downtown Suffolk all the way to the ocean front of Virginia Beach. So currently, we have 3 phases that are being designed right now. If you could see the yellow, that's the first phase. That's the Moore Avenue segment. That essentially goes from Moore Avenue to Suburban Drive. And then if you could see the green up there, the green is the driver segment number 3A. It goes from Driver to Nasby River High School. And then the third one that's in design now is the red segment. We call it segment 3B, and that goes from Nasby Parkway, right there where 58 crosses it, to Cedar Lake Shores, Cherry Blossom Drive. The only outstanding, after those 3 are built, the only outstanding segment would be that orange segment, 3C, that goes from the Nasby River High School to connecting to Cedar Lake Shores, and that one actually will go over the Will Roy overpass that we're building now. We have partial funding for that, so we're still working on getting that fully funded. And as you can see, construction is anticipated in summer of 2026. About a year construction to get those 3 segments completed in about summer of 2027. And then finally, Nasby Parkway over Beeman's Mill Pond. I don't know if you're aware, but there's actually a bridge there. And that bridge was built in the 1920s, and it needs to be replaced. So that's why we're doing this project. With this project, since we actually have to drive piles and replace the bridge, right now it's looking like a detour is most likely needed to do this work. We anticipate about a 9-month detour period. Looking to detour traffic down Wilroy Road and Progress Road from Portsmouth Boulevard. So with that concludes my presentation.
Okay. Thank you very much for your presentation. I think at this point, I'll just ask if everybody has any questions.
First of all, thank you so much for this, because this was one of the requests from our chair because of transportation reasons. So thank you so much for going through this. The one project I had a question on, the Shoulders Hill Road widening, and it could have been just the way the slide was printed out on our sheet. We have the preliminary engineering anticipated start date of January 2025, but anticipated construction completion, that's end date is blocked up by a picture.
So you're looking at the Shoulders Hill Bridge Road?
Shoulders Hill Road widening.
Oh, okay. So that will start January of 2025. We'll get money next fiscal year for that. And then anticipate, I see, there's no date on
Completion
it.
date,
Anticipated completion should be around spring of 2029.
Thank you.
One question, Darrell, since we've got you. Charlington Road, what's the latest? When might we have that open? More calls on that than anything.
I believe it should, 2 or 3 months, it should be done.
3 more months, do you think?
Yeah, at the 3 months the most conservative. They're making great progress on that now.
All right, thank you.
Why did it take so long? What was going on?
There was
I'm
a
just curious.
supply issue that kind of set everything, put everything on hold.
because the work that was needed done shouldn't have taken
No.
as long as it did.
Yeah, supply.
Mike,
Okay, you want to say your comment?
I have a point question, just to clarify something here. The 17 Bridge Road widening to take place from Wynwood down to Harborview, that's a north and southbound widening, correct?
You said Route 17,
The Route 17 widening
yes,
from Wynwood
yes, to
to
Harborview.
Harborview Boulevard is a north and south widening,
Yes.
correct?
Correct.
I want to know, is there a provision in there, because Mr. Ward and myself have been dealing with this, on the intersection right there where the fire station's at, Bertie Howe Manor?
Mhm.
There's always been an issue about having a right turn in to that location. Is this going to allow for that to occur when that widening's done? Because those people have difficulties getting in and out of that property.
I'd have to look at the plans. I think we're at 30% plan level, so I could check on that. and
I just
get
want to
back
make
you.
sure that
I'll
we're just not widening the lanes, but we're taking care of that right turn in for
Yeah.
them.
Okay,
Is this the golden opportunity to do it if we're going to go ahead and do the road construction and widening?
right, okay.
I think they would be happy
Check on
with
that.
that.
Yeah, I want to say this here, since you brought it up, Route 17 and Town Point Road, and if you're gonna widen it, wider, people can't even, there's no light there, so how you think they'll cross over 4 lanes? And when you go straight across to the interstate, we need a light up there if you're gonna widen it like that. That's 4 lanes, that's about 8, I mean, that's too much for them to go across. And with the traffic going on like now, that Route 17 is terrible. So the people that's coming out of Town Point Road and Route 17, they can't go across. They can't even go across. There's no light there. That's an elderly, most likely, almost community. So I don't see nothing in that, and I'm glad Councilor Foster brought it out, but Bernhard Lane, man, that was going on for these 3 to 4 years now, and they said wait to the improvement, they would take care of that right turn.
So you're saying that the Town Point Road there,
Yeah.
I'd have to look at it.
Another thing I want to mention that you might know, when you're coming off 664, and you hitting Route 17, and you going off the interstate, and you trying to enter into Route 17, that's terrible there too. I don't know how can you slow somebody from coming off the interstate and the traffic going that way, because you can't get in. If you want to go from right to left, you have accident there. As a matter of fact, somebody hit me there one time, so I'm just saying, I know, and you know, it's not, you see it twice in one, in the accidents.
Vice Mayor, we had talked about the projects that are right in the near term, the next few years, but there is a project that's going to be looking at the entrance to Harborview to Route 17. Staff's going to bring back some of the conceptual options they're looking at to improve that area in the near future for council's consideration. Probably going to, when I having some of the direct reports, probably have staff in to show you some of those options.
Thank you for the information. That's good information. Thank you.
Yeah, all of these are wonderful things. They're on the table, I know, but I'm going to speak for my area, which is a rural area, and we have 431 square miles in our city, and I don't see anything up here that addresses any of the rural area where I live. The back roads are in terrible condition. I've expressed this to Mr. Williams before, and before that to Mr. Milty over the years. And, you know, there have been a lot of improvements, I will say this, in bridges. When we built Southwestern, there were about 5 bridges that the buses could not travel over because of the weight restrictions. A lot of those bridges have been addressed between the community of Whaleville and the Holland community. I know that. I've noticed over the last few months, there have been road improvements, especially my road, which has been resurfaced, and some other improvements. I know it's an election year as well, and I'm glad to see all of those things coming. But I'm concerned about the rural areas. Recently, we had a bus accident on Cypress Chapel Road, which is in my borough, part of it. That road extends into the other Cypress borough. But I'm concerned about the roads in our area. Ditching has not been done adequately, and I need to express this. My road, for one, I've lived on for 71 years, and in the last 20 years, there has been absolutely no ditching, other than when they put in the spectrum lines, there was a little excavating done then. But there has been very little ditching. And these are my major concerns as we try to plan for new schools and whatever. We need to plan for new roads and ditching concerns. A lot of the ditches could be improved if someone knowledgeable of rural areas was to look at this situation and probably come up with a plan, of how to, when we have heavy rains and so forth, my road is flooded a lot of times in several places and many others, and it is a dangerous situation that we are looking at. I just want to voice this concern as a citizen of this city for now on 70-some years, and I have seen this, and I know that the schools need this addressed in our area. Mr. Privet is doing an excellent job with transportation. Dr. Gordon's doing an excellent job, but their hands are tied on many of these small roads. And I think if we address some of those things in the future, this would help with the transportation issues and the congestion on our roads. Thank you. I just wanted to say that.
But to your ditching issue, we just implemented a new plan.
Oh, well, good.
I'm going to let the manager go in more detail, that encompasses the entire city, and I think that was presented about a month ago.
Yeah, it's our new ditch maintenance program, where we've divided the city up into 10 segments, and we're going to hit every segment over a period of time. So you should see some improvements in that area. And as far as you're talking about the rural area, I'll say this: we, in our office, we have what we call, I guess, a vision book, and we hear things like what you're saying, and we take note of it, and we take inventory, we sit down, put it in the book, and kind of come up with a high-level estimate, schedule for it, and then we store it away in the book until maybe a funding stream of some type comes along, and so we have the information already there, so we'll be ready whenever that money comes along. So we have a book that identifies a lot of projects like what you're describing in the rural areas, that it's a matter of finding funding to get to it and to do it.
Ms. Byram, to follow up on what Daryl's saying and what the mayor's saying, is that we've just briefed council on a more of a proactive approach to ditches than a reactive, which we've always lived in, it seems like. And but that doesn't keep us from getting out of schedule if we have a major issue, too. But as Daryl said, we've divided up in sectors, 2 sectors, north-south, trying to hit each year and then get it into a routine, so it's maintenance was there.
That sounds promising. I look forward to that.
Work with us, though, because there's a lot of ditches.
There's a lot to be done.
Okay, I think we got everybody. Anybody else have any other comments? Okay, if not, then we'll just move to closing remarks, and I would welcome some brief closing remarks, starting with Councilman Fawcett.
I'm good. Thank you, everybody. I enjoyed being here, and let's continue to work.
Councilman Bennett.
I appreciate all the information this afternoon, but I appreciate Dr. Buck's history on some of the funds about the administration building, and we talked about it. We could have paid for that building, a new building, a long time ago. If we could have taken that money rather than pay rent for downtown, we could have had a new building already. But we kicked the can down the road and said we want to keep foot traffic downtown during that period of time. So it was we were the ones that sort of say, don't move out from downtown. We want you to stay downtown to keep foot traffic. So I just wanted to appreciate your history of some of the things that took place a few years ago. And I'm ready to go home.
You get Dr. Bryan, I might say it.
I appreciate being at this table with my colleagues on the school board, but then also my compadres on the city council. I think everything that we covered today was well covered. I appreciate all the presenters that came and spoke to us, and I hope that collaboratively we can really start working on some of these things. I think we brought some issues to the table we need to address, and I look forward to our next meeting and maybe being able to say that we're in the process of addressing this or have a plan in place to address some of these things. So, thank you.
And hopefully we will
Councilman
continue.
Johnson?
Yeah, I was going to go anyway. Hopefully we will continue to work well together, and we can do a better job as the future rolls in. The only other thing, funding streams. He just said funding streams, and I thought, yeah, this is what we need to be going after, every opportunity to get money to build schools, particularly when the state's on board, and maybe we can build those small schools. I just honestly think we can do a better job with the way we build schools in the future. The only other thing that's dear to my heart is pre-K. Well, let's have pre-K everywhere. Every kid needs to be going to school with pre-K. How many are left out there now with what we're doing now, Dr. Gordon? Are there many?
We actually just increased our pre-K, Mr. Johnson.
Right, Booker T, I saw that.
This past budget. But the waiting list is always at least 100 to 200 long. But as you saw in our presentation, there's our goal to potentially use one of our schools, once we build a new one, to turn it into our early childhood center and make that centrally located.
I'd like to see that. I think it'd be great for the city and for everybody. But thank you, guys. I think it was a good meeting. Appreciate you being here.
Board Member Slingline?
I just want to say thank you. This was a great atmosphere, a great conversation, good collaboration, and I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Councilmember Butler Barlow?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say this felt so much more productive and interactive and more valuable than our previous meetings where we were up against the deadline. So I appreciate this format. I know it's been a long evening, but I feel like we've done something tonight, and I haven't felt that in our past joint meetings. So thank you for arranging this, and I look forward to the next one.
Thank you. Board Member Byron?
I say ditto to what Ms. Barlow said. This has been one of the most productive ones I've been to over the years. And I do think most of us have got a lot of our questions answered, but I do look forward to the other information that we'll receive in the future.
Thank you. Councilman Rector?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Superintendent Gordon, Chairperson Jenkins, and Al, for putting this together. And I agree, it's been a good meeting. It's been a long afternoon, but I think we got a few things on the table, and I think everybody knows where everybody stands. So thank you all very much, and everybody have a good night.
Thank you all for coming together and for us talking together. And I think if the key is transparency, I think we accomplished that purpose. I think this is the way to do it so that everyone says what is on everyone's mind to everyone at the same time. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Appreciate it.
Vice Mayor Ward?
Yes, I also thank everyone for coming in at this here. You know, it even surprised me how we have received each other. You know, it's like you said, it's one of the best ones I attend to, and at least we had an idea of what's really going on, and we had some good information. I think we took a little off our shoulder and just let it out. And I think that we can go forward with a little respect and trust. I think we can go do a lot of things, and we got to remember what it's all about. It's not about no election. It's not about what title you hire. It's about the children of Suffolk. That's what it's about. We want to improve that. We want to make sure what happened 30, 40 years ago, we can't control that, but we can control the future. We can move on. Let's try to move on. And I just want to ask Dr. Gordon one question. How do you feel about 3 schools? When we talk about that, I just want to hear your answer on that.
You know, I'm happy, Mr. Ward, if I can get 1 or 2 built. And I think the main thing is just going to be when we're building these schools to make sure that we have enough room so that when this growth continues over the next X number of years, we don't have to come back with expansion projects. Mm-hmm. Expansion projects are not just about putting on classrooms. Expansion projects also include expanding your cafeteria, your gymnasium, your media center, et cetera. So it's going to be our goal and recommendations that we will probably end up always making to the board and hopefully the council, that we have prototype schools of elementaries at a capacity of 800, middle schools hopefully at a capacity of 800 to 1,000 and so forth. I think that'll hopefully be our plan moving forward. And if we have prototypes, we will also save a lot of money in design costs. And as I mentioned today, I'm also really big on looking at campus-style schools, which could potentially save the city $10 million for site location.
You the expert. You the one who they hired to run the school. We the one who they elected to take care of their money. That's our job. You know your job. Thank you.
Mr. Manager, would you like to make some final comments?
No, I do appreciate the working relationship that Dr. Gordon and I have, first of all. We obviously have different topics here. We put them on the table today, and I guess from being the city manager and administrator, it was refreshing to hear the dialogue that came across from the two boards today, and I appreciate. I felt like I was throwing grenades out there for a minute every so often, and I appreciate the patience the board and council had. Thank you.
Dr. Gordon?
You know, I also just want to echo what Mr. Moore just said, and it's always challenging, and I don't think people really understand how many times, like, he and I talk to kind of really take a look at how things go, and there's times where he's communicated with me during the city council meeting, there's times I've communicated with him during the school board meeting because he's asked, a board member may have asked me a question or something may have come up from a constituent. So we're always going to try to make plans that actually try to make both city council and the school board look good by always keeping kids first in our decisions, and we know that there's going to be challenges when it comes to money, but the school board always has tasked the job to me to make sure that we're always doing what's best not only for the current situation of Suffolk Public Schools, for the future. All of these topics that we had on here were things that need to be addressed, and I'm hoping that we can have another joint meeting, Ms. Jenkins and Mr. Mayor, in August before school starts. Thank you.
Chairman Jenkins.
Thank you. I just want to be brief and thank everyone for your presentations. Thank you for listening and putting those concerns on the agenda, because I believe it's not just about us on the school board or city council, but this affects those who live in the city of Suffolk. Particular Mr. Lewis's presentation. Thank you so much for doing that and having such a detailed report. Thank you, Mr. Moore, Mr. Mayor, and everyone who participated. This was one of the best meetings, and thank you. It's all because of you all. Thank you.
Okay, I'll go and wrap it up. I want to thank everyone for their attendance, and I do believe it was a very productive meeting. There was a lot of information put out, and just as importantly, I think a lot of questions were answered. I mean, I'll listen to some of the questions just to give an idea how things operate and the constraints that we have and the concerns that you have. But I think we need to remember in the long run, we all represent the same constituents, and we have a duty really to be good stewards of the taxpayers' money, but to accomplish what we're able to accomplish in the most effective manner, as expeditiously as we can to satisfy the needs of the school system, which will be ongoing. I mean, we've got enough for the next 20 or 30, 40 years now. Like I said, there is a challenge, and the challenges we have in schools is not unique to Suffolk. Every jurisdiction, I look at it, and it's almost a template sometimes in the paper. You just scratch out one city and you insert another name. And we're talking about 30 and 40 and 50 and 60-year-old schools. We talk about limited funding. We talk about trying to acquire more state and federal support to play catch-up. So it is important that we do what we can with what we have. And once again, I thank everybody for their input. Looking forward to some type of resolution. Really, the two big takeaways besides what we provided would be Driver Elementary, the status of Driver Elementary, and then looking at our elementary school options. And then from there, just like I mentioned before, do what we can with what we have as quickly as we can to take care of the school system's needs. And with that, if no one has any objections, did I miss somebody?
You know, Mr. Riddick had to leave because of a family emergency, and Mrs. Heather Howell, she already said that she had to go. So I just wanted to mention that he had a family emergency.
Okay. I'm just glad I didn't mess up again. Okay, it's all good. And if there's, I think you should do that. If no one has any objections, adjourn the meeting. Here we go. 6:30 appointment at Harper's Table.